All right, folks, we are live. Sorry for the hiccup here. We were just getting our people are logging in live on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to call this meeting into order. 6:01, October 3rd of the Planning and Zoning Board. Okay. All right. Before we approve the agenda, we got a staff requesting that items 2 and 3 be swapped, which is basically the Lakota hearing to be swapped. Reason for the record is they want the special exception as heard prior to the petition. Is that correct? All right. That is the only change to the agenda that I have. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
As amended.
As amended. I got a motion.
Seconded.
Okay, so I got a motion from Ms. Baker and a second from Ms. Polo. Any questions on the motion? Any comments on the agenda alone, not the items itself, just the agenda? No public comments on that. All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Couple things. Kathy Thomas will be absent today. With that being said, we do have a quorum. We have 3, which is enough for a quorum legally. However, Vice Chair Long will be attending. He is running a little bit behind. So to make everyone aware of how this works, a 3 board, obviously you're going to have a vote. If it swings 2-1, it's approved, 1-2 denied. However, when Vice Chair Long arrives, if the vote is split 2-2, it goes in as a motion of denial to the commission. Doesn't mean that the commission won't hear it. It just goes as a motion that we denied. It was a failed motion, and it'll go to the commission as a failed motion as a 2-2. 2-2 is not an approval. So with that being said, I just want to make sure that all parties are aware of when Vice Chair Long arrives, that even if it is a 2-2 split, it'll go as a failed motion. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Mayor Marlowe.
I just wanted to let folks know on behalf of the family that Board Member Woodcock passed away quite suddenly right after the storm. So I think we were all planning on having a little bit more time with her, but it progressed rapidly. She was surrounded by family, and I just want to send out my condolences to the family. She served on this board for many years, but beyond that, she served this community. She was a charitable woman. She was always looking out for the students at all of our schools. She substituted. She donated her time and her money and her talents and her energy. And she was just an incredible woman. And so Newberry lost to Angel. The family has been pretty private about it. Kathy, her daughter, was intending to be here tonight to serve on the her first meeting, but clearly, she needs to be with her family at this point. So I just wanted to let the board know, let the community know. They haven't, I think it's been out on social media a little bit now, but the family has been pretty guarded. So I've tried to respect that privacy as well. But we do want the whole family to know that we're with them, and we appreciate everything that she gave to the city of Newberry and this board in particular. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
At this moment, if any board member wants to say anything, I would allow it. Ms. Polo.
I did not have the honor of getting to know her as well as I would have liked, but I was heartbroken, and my condolences do go out to the family and to the community and all of the good that she did here.
We were very lucky to learn a lot from her. I know my time on the board with her, and so my thoughts go out to the family. It's a difficult time, so my condolences to them.
I as well will reflect my board's comments on that. Ms. Woodcock was a very special person. We definitely didn't see eye to eye, but that didn't mean that we didn't respect each other, we didn't care about each other. We had one thing in common, and that was our community. and she really loved this community and strived to continue to preserve it. So my prayers and my thoughts are to her family, and we send lots of love to Kathy and her family as they're going through this difficult time. You have anything else? All right. So with that, Ms. Baker, did you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance so we can?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we went ahead and swapped. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have a motion from Ms. Baker.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Polo. Any comments on the consent agenda? Public comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. We will move on to the special exception, public hearing on special exception petition. Madam Attorney, am I okay to go ahead and just read the quasi-judicial proceedings at first? That way I don't have to keep repeating myself on this. All right, folks, we're gonna enter into a quasi-judicial proceeding here. So basically the way it works is the city attorney or the chair shall read into the record the ordinance resolution by title and number, or applicant's name, file number, and the subject matter to be decided if there's no ordinance or resolution. Then the city attorney or chair shall explain the rules concerning the testimony. Primarily that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision, and shall state the following: all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The city attorney or chair will go over the orders of presentation. The applicant, staff, and participants' requests to speak may be collectively sworn. We'll do that in just a minute here. We'll get everybody sworn in. We'll disclose any ex parte communications, and the presentation order will go as follows. Staff will give their overview. The applicant will present their application. They will have no time limit. Staff report or recommendation will have no time limit. Have we been reached by a third-party intervener? So we'll scratch the third-party intervener. Then we will go to public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. The applicant may cross-examine at that point. Staff may cross-examine at that point. Members of the decision-making body, through the chair, may ask questions of the staff, applicant, or the participants. Final argument may be made by the applicant, party interveners, and then staff related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing and introduced to the record. The city attorney will advise the decision-making body as the applicable law, the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. Then we will deliberate on the application. After deliberation, a vote shall be taken to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. Basically, all this means is that that us as a commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board, which means that we will have to follow certain rules and adhere to different standard of decision making. The primary rule we must follow concern testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when a judicial board makes a decision. So anybody wishing to speak today, we ask that you stand up, and Janine, will you be able to swear us in? So anybody wishing to speak on the record today, Janine will collectively swear everybody in at the same time. On any of the items today.
And I'm gonna watch and try and see if anybody comes in the room. So if everybody would raise their right hand, and I'm gonna have you all repeat after me, and then I'm just gonna start over here and go this way and get names. And lots of you have already got your names. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. John Paul Perez. Brian Thomas.
Jason Coleman?
Jason Coleman? Okay. Kirk? Mhm. Got it. Mhm. Last one? Amber, yep. Yep. Pam Willis, Pam Burns, sorry, I guess I came else. Chris Claus, my mom was right. And share everybody.
All right, everybody's been sworn, correct?
Everybody's been speaking, I said.
All right. All right, so with that being said, can I do ex parte communication on all items, or it has to be one by one?
Let's do them on each item as the class item.
All right. So with that being said, actually, Madam Attorney, can you read into the record the ordinance? Oh, she knows you switched.
I actually have a resolution for this one. Is that correct? Okay. Perfect. This is resolution number 2022-65, a resolution of the City Commission serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, considering an application for a special exception within an agricultural A zoning district as authorized under Section 4.4.5 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations to allow a small-scale rural subdivision on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, parcel identification numbers 04371-001-001 and 04379-000-000, consisting of approximately 45.53 acres, providing for repealer and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. All right, with that being said, I am going to ask if we've had any ex parte communications on this particular item. Ms. Polo?
No, no.
I have not.
I have not. And with that being said, staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my name is John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department, presenting the request, the special exception request before you tonight. This is the very first small-scale rural subdivision that the Planning and Zoning Board is getting to see. So you'll get to see the product of the work you did with this code section. This is the project known as Lakota. It's adjacent to the plat that was recently approved, Barrington, just west of it, southwest of it. Here's a general location of where the property is within the city limits. That's all the way out on 170th and 15th Ave. There's an aerial of the subject property showing the adjacent Barrington plat, southwest 15th Ave, which is going to be the road that provides access to the plat, as well as the Jonesville Baptist Church. As you can see, it's a heavily wooded property. And with the small-scale rural subdivision, that's something that we were looking to preserve, especially on 15th Ave. And so they will have that 50-foot undisturbed buffer along 15th Ave, so those trees will not be going away. So the request is a special exception to allow a small-scale rural subdivision within the agricultural zoning district. Lot sizes range from 2 to 4.7 acres. It's a total of 15 lots that are being proposed. The gross density is 1 unit for every 3 acres. It'll be on an individual well and septic systems, and Clay Electric will be the purveyor for electrical services. This is marketing material for the plat showing the subdivision. It's a more colorful version that was shared by the applicant, so it's a little bit easier to discern the layout of the property. But you can see there's the buffer all around, as well as on the front, and just the layout of the lots generally. Very similar to how Barrington is. It's like a serpentine road that will run through the development. Here are some material samples of what will be at the entrance of the property. An example of the gate. They gave a schematic drawing of the gate itself. Some examples of other signage, including their material and font that they used on that signage. Their logo that will be going on their material. And they'll be using a black wood panel fence similar to Barrington. So they will be cohesive with their perimeter fence on the outside. Staff has included some suggested conditions. I probably should have shortened these. That's a lot of words.
You can go ahead and summarize.
I will summarize. So we're asking for reference to the supplemental regulations where we talk about dark skies, lot sizes, fencing requirements, all those things to be referenced in the HOA docs. HOA being Homeowners Association, for those listening. Because those are in addition to the requirements that they're self-imposing. And the applicant's here to answer any questions about those self-imposed restrictions that they're placing on themselves within the HOA docs. Another condition is that just reiterating some of the code on special exception, stating that they have to secure all of their approvals from the city within 6 months of approval of that special exception. And just reciting that section of code for the application in the resolution. Outside of that, there's not a lot more to present, so just our findings were that it was consistent with our adopted code, Land Development Regulations Comprehensive Plan, and at the pleasure of the board, you may approve with, oh, there's more conditions. Jeez, that one slipped in there. Findings came in a little early. Permits for well and septic, easement for the property. That's not county 235. This is from another presentation. Sorry about that. That was a bad slide. So moving on to the motion. The motion we recommend is either to recommend the Board of Adjustment approve conditions or deny the request for a special exception. Yeah.
Thank you, JP.
That completes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Applicant, do you have anything to present, or? Hey, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Ronnie Yomi of CHW. Yeah, we agree with the conditions that staff has for the special exception, and we did impose one because the neighbor to the west asked for a 40-foot undisturbed buffer instead of the 25-foot, and we want to be good neighbors, so we're working with them, and we put that condition on ourselves.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, JP.
That condition, because it's a 40-foot buffer easement, it's on the plat request that's going to follow this item. So you'll see that 40-foot buffer along the west property limit on the plat application, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any public comment on this particular agenda item? All right. And at this time, I guess the applicant is good with the staff's recommendations and whatnot, so we're not gonna do any kind of cross-examination. The members of the decision-making body through the chair may ask questions of the staff or the applicant. Ms. Polo, did you have anything? Ms. Baker, you do? Do you want me to go first?
Go first.
Okay. I have a quick question for JP and the actual engineer on this. The plat, the way it's designed, thank you for putting that together, but I take it as, that's not like set in stone, correct? Like the way the road is being built out? Because if we can go
I'll
back to the
defer.
slide of the
Yeah.
lots, I just had a quick question on the road layout. So, yeah, so we're just out of curiosity, lot 6, 5, and 3, you see where it's kind of like, it looks like it's just a dead end? Is that something that's like set in stone? Is that gonna cause an issue for fire or EMT if they need to circle back around? Do we need to make that a roundabout? Is that something that we don't even need to worry about right now?
That's actually a really great question. I'm gonna defer to Randy or Chris.
And forgive me if I'm getting ahead here. I just saw it and I figured I'd just bring it up before we approve anything.
Great question.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So we are actually trying to work with the cleared areas that are existing there because we want to try and preserve as many of the trees on site as possible. So that's kind of why we had the roundabout more to the north. During construction plan review, should the fire review require some type of turnaround there, then I'm sure we can design something to get that to work.
Yeah. That was just my only concern, is just seeing that there's a possible dead end. All of a sudden now you're gonna have to revisit how you map it out because we need a clearance for a truck to get in and out of there.
Yes, sir.
All right, did you need any kind of amendment to that, or is that something that they can just work out on their own? Ryan, or?
I'm assuming it happened during construction plan review.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like I said, it's just something just precaution, I guess, of, like, oh man, there's a dead end now and fire's not gonna be happy with it, so.
yep. We'll work with fire rescue during construction plan review.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Baker, did you have anything?
Mr. Chair, just to expand on that, what you're seeing here is a graphical representation, not the
Right.
actual plat. What's not shown are the actual limits of the right-of-way for those lots that you're noticing, 7, 6, and 8. There's actually much more right-of-way there, so if they do need to come back and put in a roundabout, I believe there's sufficient right-of-way to build it without having to amend the plat.
All right, perfect, thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Did I understand right, JP, that if this goes forward, they've got 6 months to get all their other permits in line?
Their site plan approval, correct?
Is
Yeah.
that 100% internally with us, or do they have to go to any other outside agencies? Because 6 months seems like a pretty,
It's a really tight
Tight
window.
window.
It is, yeah.
Why would we
It's
make it-
submittal only, it's not approval, essentially. So
okay, so they have 6 months to get something to you,
yes.
even if it's not complete? What's the impetus behind such a tight window? I mean, I know we like sunsets, we don't want things lingering out there forever, but 6 months seems,
Yeah, so the
in-
rational nexus behind the sunsetting of approvals like this is that they're non-conforming uses. They're being approved under special exception. And those you don't want typically lingering because there's a certain circumstance under which they were approved. And if those, as time goes on, those circumstances may not remain in place. And yeah, it's a general
staff
practice.
objective if this board were to make it 8 months, or, I mean, when we talk about
Yeah.
sunsetting, we generally think about, okay, we approve something, the developer has 10 years to move
Yeah.
forward. They don't for in 10 years, the world does look different.
Yeah.
Though I know we're changing really fast these
Yeah.
days, but 6 months seems,
12 months is kind of generally where most
I just hate to have
municipalities
to
lie.
redo this because we had a clause in there.
But champing at the bits. I will say they are, certainly. They want to know when they can get all this submitted and approved.
I mean, if it's all
scheduled, so-
internal, that makes me feel a
Yeah.
little bit better, but Newberry
Yeah.
doesn't control all the permitting processes. So if they've
Correct.
got to go to water management, if they got to go to the county, if they got to go to the state, we don't have controls over those things. But this is just site, just to us. We can make sure that, and they just have to submit it to us and they hit that deadline.
Yeah, for
Seems
this
like a-
particular
just a
process, we're looking at construction plans and the final plat. And so those are the items that we'd want to see submitted. The plat is in a generally final state as it's been drawn currently, so we've worked extensively with them to getting it in a very final state.
And the applicant has no objections to this 6 month? You'll get it in, okay?
All right, does any board member have any other comments or questions for the applicant? All right, at this point, you can make any kind of final argument? Good? We good?
Staff waves.
We're good? All right, and applicant waives final argument. City attorney, will you advise the decision-making body, please?
Mr. Chair, the appropriate standard here is competent and substantial evidence in order to approve this application.
Thank you. All right. And we enter into deliberation, and if we don't deliberate, I will entertain a motion. Ms. Polo.
I have no deliberations. I move to approve based on staff's conditions.
Okay. So Ms. Polo waives her deliberation and moves on to a motion. Ms. Baker, do you have anything to?
Well, there's a motion on the floor,
I know.
so, yeah. I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a second from Ms. Baker. Do we have any comments on the motion? Any public comments on this particular motion? Hearing none.
This is just for the special exception.
Correct.
Okay.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous. Madam Attorney, if you can kindly read into the record the next item.
When will it be heard?
Oh, this would be heard on October 24th before the Board of Adjustments. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is resolution number 2022-26, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving a preliminary plat for Lakota subdivision with an Agriculture A zoning district as authorized under Section 5.16 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, tax parcel number 04371-001-001 and 04379-000-000, consisting of approximately 45.53 acres, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
All right, thank you, Madam Attorney. Before we continue, do we have any ex parte communication? Ms. Polo? Ms. Baker?
I have none.
I have none. Staff, you are free to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you is the preliminary plat related to the special exception that was just approved or recommended for approval for a subdivision called Lakota. Here's a general location of the property within the city limits. Here's an aerial image of the property. Again, it's a small-scale rural subdivision, lots ranging from 2 to 4, 15 lots, an overall density of 1 unit for every 3 acres. Well, septic, and clay will be the purveyor of electric services. Here's the sketch of the plat, so you can see that additional right-of-way that's there that we were talking about. And you can see some low-lying wetland areas, as well as the 25-foot perimeter buffer, and on 15th Ave, the 50-foot buffer that's required. What's not illustrated here is that 40-foot buffer that we were discussing. That was kind of an 11th hour item, so it's been added as a condition and included in the resolution. Here's that graphical image that was included with the prior presentation, a little bit easier to understand from a technical drawing. And again, just the conditions for should summarize these. First condition is to provide dedication language on the face of the plat for the 25-foot buffer. That was missing in our review, but we had a discussion with the agent and their surveyor, and we've come to an agreement on that. Prior to acceptance of the final plat, we'll have the revised HOA docs with reference to the supplementary code regulations for small-scale rural subdivisions. Also prior to the acceptance of an application for a final plat, they'll have paving and grading and drainage drawings for lots 5 through 7. Those are those 3 lots on the west side that have that the terminus of the road. That last condition there where they voluntarily are increasing that buffer along the west plat limits for those lots 5 through 8 from 25 feet to 40 feet to be a good neighbor. And staff finds the request consistent with the city land development regulations and the comprehensive plan, and the recommended motion is to recommend to the City Commission to approve approval conditions or deny the resolution and preliminary plat application, and that completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, JP. At this point, I'll bring up the applicant.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, and we again agree to the conditions staff has, so we're good.
Your job's pretty easy today, man. All right. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Let me retract my statement. Do you have any public comments on this particular item? All right. Hearing none. Are you gonna waive your cross-examination, staff?
Yeah, we waive cross-examination. I just want to mention that the applicant's been incredibly amicable to work with, and I'm very excited for them to get started, and hope they come back with more projects in the future. But they've been very accommodating to all staff's requests, so yeah, I just want to thank them.
Thank you. All right, applicant, did you have anything to cross-examine? Are you waiving that as well? All right, at this point, members of the decision-making body, through the chair, may ask questions to the staff, applicant, or the participants. Ms. Polo?
I have no questions at this time.
We have none from Ms. Polo. Ms. Baker?
I have some questions. Who reviews the covenants and when in the process for this?
So the covenants it's a private agreement between the homeowners. It's a civil matter, so that's why we're only asking for that there be a reference to our code there, because we can't enforce it.
Okay. All right. That was my question then.
What do you mean, right now? You're gonna wait till we deliberate? Okay. I don't have any other questions. I just want to thank the applicant at this point for taking into consideration everything this board had mentioned, and also taking into consideration what the neighbors have mentioned. So thank you very much. With that, I will ask Madam Attorney, will you advise the decision-making body?
The standard is a finding of competent substantial evidence in order to approve this application.
Madam Attorney, would you like me to continue to ask you after everyone, or do we get one, full one for all?
I think we can just sort of uniformly apply that.
Okay, so we're good. Okay, so for the record, we're good. Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any final argument from staff?
None.
Do we have any, I have a no from the applicant. All right, deliberations, Ms. Polo.
I have nothing to contribute to that.
I will waive my time to Ms. Baker.
I'll make a motion to approve this with the exceptions outlined by the staff.
All right, so I got a motion from Ms. Baker. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
I have a second from Ms. Polo. Do we have any comments on the motion on the floor? Public comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. We look forward to seeing how beautiful it comes out. Thank you, guys. All right, we are moving on to item number 4, public hearing for special use permit of mining activities. Do we have to read it? This is not quasi judicial from what I'm seeing here. So, does the attorney still have to read it? All right, Madam Attorney, if you can read into the record the resolution or special use permit.
This is Resolution 2021-66, or 2022-66, a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, granting a special use permit to allow the expansion of a mining use within the mining future land use category in Agriculture A zoning district on 124 contiguous acres more or less, pursuant to an application by the property owner of said acreage on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, tax parcels 01855-000-000, 01855-001-000, 01855-002-000, 01856-000-000, and 01862-000-000, providing severability, providing for repealer, and providing an effective date.
All right, thank you very much. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. And the request before you tonight is the special use permit. Last meeting, you guys looked at the land use and the zoning change for this property. So a lot of this is going to be very familiar to you. In addition, our code requires that the City Commission issue a special use permit for certain industrial uses that are more intense than your standard, such as mining or material-oriented type, like Argos is a material-oriented industrial use that requires special consideration by the Commission and the Planning Board. So it's a general location of the property within the city limits. Here is the proposed land use that the Planning Board has already provided a recommendation on. Here's the zoning that the applicant has proposed. They're converting from county to city on this one. Here's an aerial of the property. As you can see, part of the site is currently being mined. This is part of a separate FDE permit that was approved prior to annexation into the city. The rest of the property is a former mining site, and they will be going back in to extract more resource from the site. The plan is, just to refresh everybody's memory, as the mining operation that's currently south of the property comes to conclusion, they'll be migrating that operation onto this property. So this is not something that'll happen tomorrow. This will be something in the future that will occur. And the zipline park that we're all excited for. And as part of this process, we're now on the third part, which is the special use permit that will follow the establishment of the zoning and land use. I summarized the conditions on this one. So we're going to ask the applicant to maintain the landscape buffer, similar to Argos. Monitor noise, vibration, and complaints. The actual condition gets in a little bit more detail about keeping a log and whatnot. Provide and coordinate fire service and emergency plan with the fire department. Notify the city of any other agency violations, certain time constraints placed on that one. And remediate the driveway aprons to the residential properties. So on the property that they will be doing the mining activities, there's 3 residences currently. Those have tenants currently. Eventually when they're getting ready, those leases will be terminated, and that site will be prepared for mining. We're asking that they just repair that area in the right-of-way that connects to County Road 235 to be grass or something other than a driveway connection that leads to nothing. So relocate Gopher tortoises. Carrying this through from the other ones. And staff is reserving the right to request a traffic study if the impacts on County Road 235 are greater than anticipated. Right now, what's being proposed is no increase, that they're going to have the current operation from the existing site migrate to this one, so there will be no increase in traffic. However, if it's observed that that's not the case, that there is an increase, then we have the ability to go in and ask for a study to be done. Okay, and also just reciting some of the code in the conditions, just for clarity. All these conditions have been incorporated into the resolution, and staff finds it consistent with the land development regulations and the comprehensive plan. And at the board's pleasure, you may recommend to the City Commission to approve conditions or deny the resolution and special use permit application. That completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any questions? Do we need that? No, it's not a quasi. Yeah, we're not in quasi on this particular item. So at this point, staff, we have any questions, or we can entertain a motion at this point, correct? Do we have any questions on this particular item on the mining?
I have one question. Can you give me just an idea of how much closer to residents this new mining is going to be distance-wise? Because we've got this in here about monitoring noise and vibration complaints. Is this going to move the mining closer to residential area?
That's a great question. Not able to move the slide, but the current operations south of the site, they're going to be moving north. They'll be getting closer to the agricultural uses and further away from the single-family uses south of this. So it'll be going away from the property. I know that blasting has been an issue for the folks closest to it in Newberry Oaks. And so it should give them some sort of solace to know this is moving away from them. So it's the same, it's going to be a continued operation. It's just moving away from their property. And so hopefully with moving away, that also means the directional blasting that comes with it will be less intense than it has been in the past.
Does that satisfy?
Mr. Chair, while you're there about number 2, so is the current mine obligated to follow a similar where they have to log complaints?
Let me get Clay Swieger up here.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got a wealth of knowledge on the actual operation, and Paul Stokey from Limestone is also here to answer that.
Okay.
Clay?
Hi.
Hey, good evening.
My question regards condition number 2. Is the mine currently, do they currently keep a log of complaints?
My understanding is that the DEP does require notification when there's violations to the local government. So there's probably something very similar. There's not a specific condition like this, as the mining operation currently is in unincorporated Alachua County. And so this would be a city additional layer of protection, if you will, or condition for the mining operation.
Thank you. So,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Perez, what would the city do with this complaint log potentially?
That is just for if it becomes a known issue. That is just data that the city has gathered to justify changes to code or other remedial actions to address noise and vibration complaints from residents. So as we have, if it becomes a problem, we would have something to rely. On this date, we had so many complaints, but then it turns out, based on their information, they never did blasting on that day. So to just kind of build the log of data that we have. So it happens on occasion where people complain about blasting or noises, and there was no blasting on that day, actually. It happens on occasion.
And I would just add to say that, this condition, the intent is just to make sure that the city always has a line of communication with this operation, and it's codified that it's required. That's a typical standard procedure, but it's a good condition. It's one to make sure there's a line of communication with the local government. So if there were ever to be an issue or notifications, that it's certainly known and required, and there's a report has to be provided within 24 hours.
Thank you so much for the
Yes, ma'am.
explanation. One of my concerns with this was that we would just be logging complaints and potentially nothing would happen.
Right.
And I think that has been a concern of
Yes, ma'am.
citizens, that they complain and nothing ever happens with that.
And I will say too, there's a pretty stringent FDEP permitting process that would be undertaken if the city were to approve this permit. And they do require multiple inspections per year. I think they're quarterly. And so just to make sure that the facility is in full compliance with all of their regulations as well. And so those reports would be provided to the city. And I would like to also just say to Member Paulo, this mining will be moving further away from the residential core of Newberry. And it's in a pretty isolated area. I don't think there were any residences within our mailing radius. I don't think there's any within over half a mile. So it's really moving the mining operation over time northward away from the areas that I think some of the residents have had their primary concerns. Thank you.
I don't have any further questions.
I appreciate all the information. At this point, I guess we can entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution with the conditions as outlined by city staff.
I have a motion from Ms. Baker.
I second that motion.
I have a second from Ms. Polo. Any comments on the motion? Public comments on the motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. All right, so, huh? Yeah. Oh, he is. Okay, so Member Long is shortly arriving. I am gonna have just a 5-minute recess because I know the next particular items can be a little bit lengthy, and we want to make sure that we're giving all our attention to the item. So forgive us, folks, but this can get a little long. I will ask that we take about a 5-minute recess, and we'll adjourn at the moment, and we'll come back. All right? Oh. Yeah. right, folks, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:57. He knew I was gonna slam it. All right, so we want to welcome our Vice Chair Long. Welcome, Vice Chair Long. We're glad you're here. All right, with that being said, we'll move on to, we're gonna go back into our quasi-judicial proceeding procedures. Once again, we are now officially a judicial board. So everything we make a decision on is strictly on the evidence that is presented to us. So, with that being said, Madam Attorney, can you read into the record the ordinance?
This is ordinance number 2022-46, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, 2 and 3 Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from agriculture and residential low density to planned residential development on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, tax parcels 02508-002-000, 02514-000-000, 02522-000-000, 02523-001-000, 02523-001-001, 02538-000-000, 02538-004-001, 02538-004-002, 02538-006-000, 02538-006-002, and a portion of 01981-001-001, consisting of approximately 258.3 acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. All right, with that being said, is there any ex parte communications on this particular item? Ms. Polo?
I have none.
Vice Chair Long? Member Baker?
I have none.
I have none. With that being said, staff, you are good to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is a future land use map amendment. They will be changing approximately 258 acres of agriculture and residential low density future land use to a planned residential development, which allows solely for residential as well as some accessory uses that support that, like churches, schools, and whatnot, but that's not included in this particular request. Here's a general location of the property within the city limits of Newberry, southwest quadrant. Here is a topographical map with a property overlay, so you can see some of the adjacent properties and a bit of the patchwork that's going on here with city limits, unincorporated, and whatnot that staff and the city is working to kind of fill in over time. But there are some patches here. The property straddles 266 or County Road 337. And so you'll have your detached single-family development on the west side of 337, and you'll have your townhouse development on the east side of 337. The townhouse development is closest to the existing residential, where the detached single-family will be abutting the adjacent agriculture, so kind of buffering those densities. And so this is the existing land use of the properties. Here's the proposed land use of the properties. Here's the preliminary development plan showing internal circulation, phasing, as well as land use allocation. This will be phase one of the development. This will be the open space. We're requiring that the open space or amenities be completed prior to the commencement of phase two of the development, so the residents have access to those. This is phase 2 of the development, and then finally phase 3. Again, here are the townhouses, and as you can see, this is area C. There is no open space being shown here on this one, so we're asking either open space be allocated for the townhouse development or a crosswalk be created across 337 so the residents of the townhouses can have safe access by foot to the park that is being proposed. Our code has a bit of architectural determinism in it, so multifamily has to have Florida vernacular. This is a development from Fort Lauderdale that is an example of townhouse Florida vernacular. This is required by code and has been incorporated into sorry, Baker. Member Baker seems very upset by this. Okay, yeah. Okay. But for non-residential, just so all board members are aware, non-residential as well as multifamily has a requirement to be Florida vernacular in our code. It's a design requirement. This is the internal circulation. This is Southwest 15th Ave. Southwest 15th Ave actually terminates a little bit east of this property. However, they'll be continuing it through this property. The city has also worked with the adjacent landowners to secure the right-of-way necessary to create a continuous Southwest 15th Avenue to the properties to the east. So that's a capital improvement project we hope to address in the future. So access for the 2 areas, the multifamily and the detached, will be off of Southwest 15th Ave and 266. There's also a property connecting to Newberry Road where they'll be accessing the west side of the development. So just so there's an understanding of the process of this land use change for a planned residential development, what's before the board tonight is a preliminary development plan. The land use process and the zoning process are broken up into 2 different approvals. So this is something that will come back before the planning board in greater detail, should everything be approved, or if it's denied and they wait a 12-month period and then they come back with a similar application. So the preliminary development plan is a conceptual plan and includes very basic information, the gross number of units, where access is going to be, general lot size, lot widths and setbacks, and graphical elements showing that, such as the plan itself. So this future land use and rezoning technically represent the preliminary development plan. If approved, it's valid for 12 months. So they have an approval that's good for 12 months. They could go back to the city commission and ask for another 12-month extension, but that's all they could ask for is another 12 months. If nothing is submitted within that 24-month period or 12-month period, whatever it may be, the zoning and land use are changed back to what they were prior to the approval. If they submit the final development plan, it has to be submitted within the period that the preliminary development plan is valid. And once that final development plan is approved, they have 2 years to begin substantial development. Substantial development is not defined in our code, but typically that means you have your infrastructure and your road base in place. So you will have your water, sewer lines, electric, and lime rock down. You may not have the asphalt on the road though, but that's something that we can clarify in the developer agreement. That 2-year period also is eligible for an extension by City Commission. So if they were to get approval, they could essentially have a preliminary plan for 24 months, a final development plan for another 4 years, and if nothing happens on that property in that time period, 6 years, it goes back to what it was originally. So I know that there are some properties that have entitlements, but no development has begun on that. Those protections are built into the code so that we don't have vested rights just floating or being traded maybe on the other end of things. And again, what I just said, the final development plan will lapse if substantial development has not been commenced. Going over the future land use process, this is a large scale, greater than 50 acres. It will go to planning. It will go to City Commission for a first reading. We will get authorization to transmit to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. They will complete their review. That's 45 to 60 days. If there are no comments to be resolved or all comments are resolved from those agencies, it will come back for a second hearing for adoption, and that will officially approve the preliminary development plan. Sorry, it's very process heavy, but I just want to make sure that we're clear as to what we're approving today and what we'll be seeing in the future. Rezoning will be dependent on the land use, so it'll tag along with the land use. So as that completes its process, the zoning will also be heard with it. Just summarizing some of the newer conditions that we're adding to the developer agreement based on experiences that the city has observed with prior developments. We're asking for a lot of traffic calming measures to be taken, establishing specific widths of roads for when they do put on-street parking. We're limiting the length of a continuous roadway within the development, so uninterrupted. We're noticing that those are being used as drag strips in some other neighborhoods. So we're asking for a lot of traffic calming measures in that case. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're asking for some open space to be allocated to the townhouse portion of the development. The request is consistent with the land development regulations and the comprehensive plan. It does satisfy all of our minimum requirements, and as such, the board may recommend to the City Commission to approve with conditions or deny the resolution and future land use application. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you, JP. Appreciate that. The applicant, would you like to go ahead and present?
Chris, while we're waiting for your presentation to come up, I just wanted to offer my condolences to you and your family as well. It's good to see you back here, but we do feel for you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Chris Potts, Director of Engineering for JB Pro. So our presentation tonight is going to cover the CPA, the Comprehensive Plan Amendment, as well as the rezoning application, which is the next item. We'll go through several items that are not specifically identified in the presentation. But just going back through, John Paul did a great job of the overview. This property is within the city limits and the urban service area. It's roughly 258 acres. And as you can see, there is several parcels that are kind of niched in and around the development. Now, those parcels that are basically encompassed, their existing access easements will remain, so they will not be landlocked. As the development moves forward, those easements and any existing utility easements will remain. Now, as you can see over on the east side, as John Paul mentioned, the eastern property that's divided by County Road 337 has an existing plat on it. Now, that plat going through the process will be vacated as we move forward, if board allows us to, through the rezoning process. So as John Paul mentioned, there are several land use categories within this. Agricultural, both rural agricultural and agricultural, and then we're surrounded by some county ag parcels as well. The yellow color that you see is low-density residential. So there's a large piece to the south of us, and then on the east side of County Road 337, there's quite a bit of that to the north. And to the east of our eastern property is land owned by the city for their treatment plant, as well as there's a park towards the northeast. So it is within the urban service area, and high density is part of at least the city's comprehensive plan for this area. So the proposed is going to be planned development for future land use. And then moving forward to the zoning. The zoning follows the existing, which is ag. The zoning item will be followed up, but I want to go ahead and just walk through that with the board as well. And then our proposed zoning is planned residential development. So the reason why we went with the planned residential development instead of either low density future land use or a residential zoning is to work out improvements with city staff that we know are necessary for this area. For example, we're currently working with staff to set aside right away for 15th to extend 15th all the way to our western boundary. That'll help alleviate traffic concerns from everybody either entering County Road 337 or traveling straight to Newberry Road. So this will give another relief heading east, which most of the traffic in the city heads that way. So County Road 337 is a Alachua County right-of-way. So as the project moves forward, we'll work with them on the necessary improvements that are going to be required at the intersection of 15th and 337, as well as going north and south for turn lanes and those roadway improvements. And there is existing capacity on Newberry Road. So from DOT standpoint, we'll go through that permitting process too when we get into a further construction standpoint. So as John Paul mentioned, on the open space, there's several areas of the property that have old mines that are located, and those will be incorporated into the open space for amenity features. They'll be set aside for an amenity center as well. And then on the east side, although we don't show it in the hatching, we will have open space incorporated into the development. Now, the east side is not designated only as townhomes. It's designated as the option to either do attached units or detached units. But that is the only area that's designated with the ability to do either or. Everything on the west side, like John Paul mentioned, is detached only. Now that, again, the east side with the townhomes and the detached units, we're just depending on market needs. And so it's just allow some flexibility, because our understanding with talking with staff is that townhomes is an option to provide another option within the city of Newberry, that there are no real townhomes or attached units available. So this will help with the price increases as well as the prices for the housing market itself. And we agree with the conditions that city staff is providing with this. So with that, we're not proposing any sort of mixed use component. So that's why we're requesting a planned residential. We're allowed a small daycare or amenity center as part of the planned residential development, but no retail or shopping centers or anything like that. Just minimal items based on what's allowed by the planned residential development. So with that, I'd like to just conclude, and we request that the Planning and Zoning Board approve the comprehensive plan and the next item that'll be up for the rezoning, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right. At this point, well, you gave your presentation, correct?
I did.
The applicant gave. All right, so we have public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. I believe Janine has a timer right there. So I'm not one to cut off people, but please just help me out here, guys. Respect the time limit a little bit. I like to show respect and be given the same respect back. If you go over by like 5-10 seconds, I'm not gonna shut your mic off. But if you start going over into 30, almost a minute, then that creates an unfairness to everybody here that wants to speak. And it's also a Monday night. I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to go home at some point today. So public comments, please limit them to 3 minutes. There'll be time again once there is a motion on the floor to make additional public comments if you wish. So with that being said, we'll open it up to public comments. You would have to come up to the mic, state your name, and please feel free to share.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, not everybody jump at once. You just roll on in.
My name's Kirk Pomeroy. I have several concerns. One is our private road that butts up against the road map on there. It looks like they want to eventually get our private road.
Can we get the map up so we can have Mr. Pomeroy's road up there, please?
That doesn't have the roads on it.
I'll beat you. Man, wait. Now, or just come on up, sir. That's fine.
But then we can't hear him on the.
Yeah, well, he's gonna point it to me and then
The
I'll.
private road is right here.
Right there. So you come in, fit down 15.
No, come in 20th
Below.
place.
Okay.
Below the
All right.
other.
Now if you go back to the mic and say that over again, I'll point it where we're at. So you're talking about a road right
Yeah,
there.
it butts up to 20th place, which is
No, it's below that parcel.
Must be down here, 'cause I don't think
the one, there's one, 21st is down there.
That's not even on
All right, why don't you just tell us your concerns, because you're running out of time here trying to, you got a private road
See
that
the
you want.
diagonal line, property line?
Right.
Down, down, right there.
Right there.
That's the private.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So that's not in this development.
That's not even on the, being discussed tonight.
But the road in the
Guys,
development
guys.
butts up to our road.
Guys, you gotta, Kirk, this is a judicial, so once again, guys, this is a judicial hearing. You need to address the board because it is a judicial hearing. It isn't a commission meeting. It isn't a dais. I'll give you your 30 seconds back that I'm discussing this, but you guys, there's no cross-examination here. You cannot speak to them. You actually have to direct your questions to the chair.
Well.
So
that-
please, your private road is a concern, correct?
Yes, that's a minor concern compared to 850 homes. And then you add this other development, which is still active. That's going to be over about 1,100 units. And according to this 850 one, there's only going to be 298 students going to the schools. I mean, that's you go count 850 houses around here and see how many students you get. There were 6 on my road, and there were 7 school-aged children when I moved there. And that would increase just by using their figures, it would increase the elementary population by 23%. Not to mention people going to work. According to this application, there's only 850 people going to be going to work during peak hours. That's back in the 1950s when you only had one person going to work every day. You're going to have at least 1,000 to 1,100 people going through town every day, and if you punch that road through to 15th Avenue, half of those people are going to be taking their kids to school to increase the traffic by the middle school, which, I mean, y'all are To me, y'all are building a house and then coming back later on and putting in the foundation. This stuff should be done when all those developments over there by the middle school and north of town, you knew they were there. The road should have been 4-lane before they were built. A bypass needs to be built around this town and get coordinated with the city, county, and state and get it done. And then you build the buildings, especially ones this big. This is the biggest one in town. You know, and all this is going to do is create, in the morning, the traffic is going to be ridiculous when this thing gets fully occupied. And then you add the other one to it with another 250-something units. That's another 300 people going to work in the morning through town.
I appreciate your concern, Kirk. I document all concerns here, so I do have it as the private roads. The 850 could turn into 1100, and the schools and the populations, and as well as your comments very well stated on the foundation to be done before this gets developed. Like there should have been the road should have been developed. In your opinion, the road should have been developed before anything else gets done.
I mean, really, this is going to add this many people all going
I
through town
appreciate
at the
it.
same time.
I appreciate it, Kirk. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Brian.
That piece of property he's talking about, it's not even
Say your name for the record here.
Kevin Coleman.
Kevin Coleman.
Anybody don't know me, that's me.
Is he?
All right, that piece of property he's talking about.
If you're with the applicant,
Yeah.
then
Well,
you
yeah,
get
but there's people that's upset here because
Well,
y'all got something marked that's not theirs.
You'll get with the you get more time than anybody else, but right now it's for the public. So if you're with the applicant, then you'll have a chance to rebut
I'm the
after all the
public, I live right in the middle of that.
I
All
get you.
that's
I
mine.
get you.
Mr. Coleman.
Change with the program.
I'm gonna
I just don't want people to be upset
Mr.
because someone marked it in yellow that's being developed, and
Mr.
that's not nothing to do with this property.
So according to
Okay?
the steps
So
here,
there's
Mr.
upset people here that think they're getting somebody coming developing their
You're gonna get
road.
another chance.
But y'all didn't tell them that, right? Did you know
This is
that?
public comment.
I know.
So
This
public,
is my
they get a
public
chance to
comment.
talk. You're the applicant, though.
All right.
You're the applicant.
Yeah.
You're the applicant. You're going to get a chance
So-
to rebut.
So give me 1 second here. Once all the public comments, what I highly suggest what Mr. Potts has done in the past is we get all the public comments, they get everything out. And at that point, the applicant and the staff have a chance to go ahead and go back and say, hey, due to Kirk's concern or due to Johnny's concern or due to whoever's concern, and address those comments at that point. Because if not, we're going to be here all night with a constant firing back and forth here. So forgive us for trying to put some order in here, but this is a judicial proceeding. We got to.
This ain't my first rodeo. But that piece of property that's marked, and that
Right.
guy was talking about, it's got nothing to do with this.
We got it.
Okay.
All right, sir, go ahead.
Got it.
Go ahead.
My name is Ron Davis, and I have some questions. On the west side, the north-south, where it jags to the west.
Hold on, he's going to point for you.
Keep going, all the way, a little bit more. All right, straight up, right there. I own that property.
Okay, what is your name, sir?
Ron Davis.
Ron Davis.
And we have a horse farm there. We raise, breed, and show horses. And we had this farm in Gainesville. We had 12 acres there, we have 30 there. And in Gainesville, we sold our property because of the traffic and because annexation, we would not be allowed to continue what we were operating. My concern, they built 47 houses on that 12 acres. I'm kind of a farm type in country. I couldn't live in that kind of place. I'm wondering, the section to the west and the south, what is the size of the capacity of those sections?
So your concern is the size of?
The size and the number of units.
Huh? The density, the number of units.
Density,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, we'll go ahead, I'm putting this down, and we'll get you your answers as far as we go.
Okay.
Was that your only?
Well,
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more, but is that the main concern that you want to make comments on?
Especially since it's to the east and south of us.
All right.
Okay, because I was wondering the density of that property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Yeah. So, guys, you'll have, once there's a motion on the floor, you'll have a chance again to make public comments on the motion. This is after they've cross-examined and answered a lot of these questions, okay?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Pam Burns, and I am the neighbor to Ron Davis.
Okay. Are you on the north side?
I am on the west side of him, but in that same,
So you're over here.
I'm up against that red line.
Okay.
No,
North.
East?
North.
I'm going west,
I don't know where
north.
you're going, but if you turn the paper that got sent to everybody.
You're next to it. I don't want to use your time. We get it. You're next.
You're next to him, okay?
Anyways, my backyard is on that red line. So now I've got townhomes that are gonna be built in that area.
No, the townhouses are on the other side, on the east side of 266, not on the west side.
Okay. Well, one of my concerns is,
That's where the townhouses will be.
okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, that's the proposal, correct.
Okay. It was mentioned about the, possibly schools. I mean, we're running out of space. I know there's been some discussion on roads, expanding the road capacity. Right now, it's, I live on Newberry Road. So when is that scheduled to take place?
So that's the $1 million question. I won't even turn to the mayor on that one. I know that we've been bumped higher up on the list, then we get bumped down. It's a huge concern. I know that the county, the board has been very, very particular
Well,
on
with
getting
all
the
this
county
building
moved, so.
going on and the need for, probably additional schooling, I mean, the schools are packed and the road is going to be packed. I mean, I'm more concerned with building additional infrastructure before we throw up all these new homes. So that's like my main concern.
Thank you, Ms. Byrne.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we go to the next
Yes, ma'am.
public comment, I would like to say, let's try to keep it from, there really shouldn't be a back and forth between
Right.
the board and the public. So if you have a question, submit the question to the board. The question will be addressed by the applicant or staff when we get to that point. So you can pose your question to the board, but not back and forth.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, board members, thank you for your time and thank you for your service to the community. My first comment is just...
What's your name for the record?
I'm sorry, my name is Paul Hornby. I live off Newberry Road, adjacent to the development property on the east side.
All right.
Mr. Chair, let's just go ahead and assume everybody lives around this. That's why you're here. Okay.
And I'll also mention I have lived there for 35 years, okay? Longtime resident. Really enjoyed my time here in Newberry. So just general comments on public input and transparency. I was kind of disappointed to learn that the city does not require the developers to host public workshops in advance of these formal hearings for the impacted citizens. I would like to see if there's any possibility to change that in the future. With respect to the 10-day notification period, that was met. It was in the paper on the 22nd. I didn't see that, but I did get the public notice memo, which was dated on the 23rd. I received it around the 27th. That was the week of the hurricane, so a little distracted there. Bottom line here, the associated documentation with this included a document of 75 pages, 41 pages, 507 pages, of which 200 were relevant to the Weststone development. And there were two environmental documents, one for 524 pages and one with 29 pages. So overall, 850 pages of documentation for this that a layperson has like 2 days to look at. It just shows me, and then we have 3 minutes. So the process to me really favors the developers to expedite their needs. It would be nice to have more consideration for the citizens that are impacted in something like this that will go on forever. A couple more specific comments. Obviously, it's early in the process, but it would have been nice to have some kind of a site plan or schematic to provide kind of where the homes are going to be laid out, stormwater retention areas, a little more detail would help inform comments. With respect to the concurrency impact analysis, potable water, from what I understood, the project impact is 100 gallons per day per unit over the city policy. And the same with wastewater. The project impact is 165 gallons per day per unit over the city policy. I might be reading that or interpreting that incorrectly, but I would like some clarification on that. And just a general comment on preserving agriculture areas in the write-up in the application. It says the property is primarily vacant. I do know there's cattle on there. I saw them Saturday. I hear them on a daily basis. So yeah, some of it is vacant, but just want people to understand that ag is not always a 365-day-a-year cropping operation or even an every year operation. If you look at the Eastern Archery Center, there was agriculture cropping going on up to the day that it started to be developed. So I think we just need to really be, if we're concerned about preserving agriculture, I think we need to take it seriously. So,
Appreciate that,
thank you.
Mr.
Appreciate your
Hornsby.
time.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just getting the last minute notes
Okay,
from Mr. Hornsby
no
here.
problem. I'm Mrs. Hornby, so.
Oh, all
You don't
right,
have
well.
to hear a whole lot of background info. I just have an issue with the infrastructure not being built ahead of time, or
Okay.
even concurrently or shortly before they start doing this, because I'm a big walker, and it says here that this will have connected communities and allow for walking into town. Nobody's gonna walk on State Road 26. Nobody's gonna walk on 337 without some kind of sidewalk. That is essential. I mean, I would love to walk into town, but right now, you're not gonna walk on State Road 26. And also the traffic, and I know everybody talks about traffic, but it's really a problem. I've been rear-ended on a motorcycle turning into my house. The lady was just hauling butt out of Newberry, 5 o'clock, in a hurry, and just squashes people. People run off the road in the mornings into almost our fence. They'll jump over our culvert and almost go in our driveway. So it's crazy. You don't want to walk on that road without a highway, without a sidewalk, and without curbs. We need both of those things. So that was all I had to say.
Thank you, Ms. Hornsby. Appreciate it.
My name is Ted May, and welcome aboard, Mayor Marla. Jean-Paul. What I have is mainly not saying do it or don't do it, but more of a procedural thing. I only got my letter in the mail last Tuesday, and there was a storm coming, and offices were closed. So we couldn't get information. The signs were taken down for the hurricane that were denoting, the rezoning of the property. And I think that the signs only went up on that Thursday, I believe. And what I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm not against anything, and I'm not for anything, but what I believe is fair is to have a continuance where you can get more input from the people and have a longer period of time to listen to people, because this is a big project. It is. Newberry's growing. Granted, and it could be good. It could be bad. We can discuss that. But what I think we're doing is we're trying to do this way too quickly in one session on one night and say, yes, we should do this, continue, yes, we shouldn't. I think we should do a continuance, have more input. Like these, for example, these slides that you're showing. Where'd they come from? I've never seen those before. Has anybody ever seen those before? Sir. No.
Sir,
Well,
you have
yeah.
to address us.
The developers.
Sir.
Right. Right. Okay. I know. But I'm proving a point. I would like to have had that in a mail, or actually I'd like to go to the website and be able to download it, and then see what's going on. And the people would be better prepared when they come. All the more reason to have a continuance, because I think This thing has literally been dropped on the people of Newberry over in my area. I'm not going to show you where I live. I'm real close. I'm between Kirk and somebody else. So that's, but in all fairness and honesty, you need to have more input from different people and just more time. You know, another month, you meet once a month, you know, and meet next month and maybe allocate more time or whatever you need to do. That gives more time to the process so that you're doing something more prudently and correctly instead of just saying, yes, let's go forward, or no, let's deny it. Either way, you know. And I just believe that we need to have a continuance, more input, and more thought process put into the approval process of what we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. May. Just bear with me one second.
How y'all doing this evening?
Hi.
First time doing anything like this. My name is Ronald Edwards. My wife and I just recently relocated from used to be a small town like the city of Newberry to Newberry. Thought we would be good, nice, and happy here. And so far, it has been very good. So, we come from Polk City, Osceola County. Used to be small towns like this. Small towns, small problems. Big towns, big problems. City of Newberry is on the map for a good reason. You add all these houses and all this other stuff going on, you're asking for a lot more problems. They show you what it looks like now. Look at it 10 years from now, and I can tell you, you're going to need Grady Judd. Y'all know who? Everybody knows who Grady Judd is? All right. There's a set that started off just like this. Now there's a sheriff's substation everywhere. Drugs, crime, you name it. The lady outside, or the billboard going out of town, the old lady, you're going to see a lot more of them. Promise you. I come from there. I know what I'm talking about. Don't put the cart before the horse. I drive now 2 hours to work, 125 miles, one way. I used to drive 35 miles from Polk City to Orlando, 35 miles, 1.5 to 2 hours every single day. I drive a lot further, I communicate a lot. It's the same amount of time. Less people, haven't heard of no crime, nothing. I turn on the TV down there, I see it on there all the time. Grady Judd is on there all the time. Newberry will be, I guarantee you, on the wrong end of the spectrum. If this continues like the gentleman said before, I will show you, I will bring in what these developments look like before and what the developments look like after. 5, 10 years. When the housing market collapses and it goes into foreclosure, you now have probably half of those houses that are going to have broken windows, boarded up. I guarantee you it's going to happen. I've lived it in Osceola County and Polk County. So I just ask you guys for your consideration for all these fine people in Newberry. If this is moving forward, do the infrastructure first. Make sure the traffic part's taken care of. You might want to go ahead and consider finding how you're going to keep these people safe. It's going to happen. Panhandlers, drug dealers, they're coming in. They will come in. If you don't believe me, watch the TV, look, do some research. If not, the next time we come up here, I'll bring you all the information, but 3 minutes isn't going to take enough time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. All right. Well, I saw the podium. I don't know.
My property does border that.
Well,
My property is on that border.
Oh, okay.
And I do have agricultural.
And then for the record, can you say your name, please?
Yes. Start her time.
Yeah, please, Janine.
My name is Robin Lofton. I live near there as well. I want to ditto the last two gentlemen. They both hit it nail on the head here. The second gentleman, talking about the crime. Unfortunately, the crime is here already. Everybody in this room knows this. It's not anything new. A lot of it's not getting settled either. And it's a scary thing. I come from a very small community myself that wind up growing too fast, not growing the right way, not putting plans together, not putting infrastructure together. It's scary what happens. It sounds exciting putting it all together now, but the end result is not. Agriculture is important here. Without it, none of us eat. Once we pave over and plant houses, there's no turning it back to food for all of us. A couple other concerns I have is, selfishly speaking, my own property.
Bless you.
Bless you. What does this do to my property, my property values? You know, it's going to impact me, but it may be more of a negative than a positive, as some people may think. Wildlife, you know, we're displacing lots of wildlife as well. Some people aren't concerned about that, some are. Is water and sewer, is that going to be put in? And is that something that we're going to be required to connect to as well? There's a lot of issues here. None of them are very pleasant either. Privacy, that's something that all of us around there is going to lose, especially if the rumor of 850 homes goes in there. That's a scary thought. If that's true, that's pretty scary. So there are a lot for you guys to consider. I would hate to be in your shoes, to be perfectly honest with you, because it isn't pleasant, I know. I just hope you do consider the community itself and the future of it, and the people that are here that love the community like it is. You can't stop progress, and I'm not saying that, but there's a way to do it properly as well, so it benefits all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Officer Knowles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's Barry Smoker. Once again, I live in Newberry. Echoing everything that everybody else has already said, I moved here about a year ago, and we could have lived anywhere in Florida. We chose Newberry. Small town, nice people, nice neighbors. They got each other's back. And I work all around us. I work in Lake City, Gainesville, Ocala, everywhere. This is where I chose to live. I chose this place because it is a small town. This is not Gainesville, this is not Orlando, this is not any of those big places. You're turning a small hometown into a city overnight, 800 and some people moving in here. We're not ready for that, okay? We're not. You're talking streets, you're talking bridges, you're talking schools, everything everybody else has already said. Get everything else ready before we do this. You can do this later. These properties are still going to be here. But if you're going to do this ahead of time, like everybody else is saying, they're right. We are going to crumble. You are going to see people move into this area that isn't hometown people. And the hometown people, they will move out. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smoker. Kevin, you got another public comment.
What?
Got more comment?
applicant. Oh, it's public
Yeah,
Good evening. My name is Martha Waltman, and I live in the middle of all of this proposed development. And I guess my concerns, I agree with most of what everyone has already said. I'm very concerned about wildlife. I don't really know exactly what the density is that you're talking about, but from the numbers that have been thrown around, it sounds horrific, it's definitely going to change my way of life. You know, my privacy will be totally invaded. And, I mean, the traffic is just going to be horrendous. But I really would like to see something more along the lines of the Lakota development that was up there. I don't think I would disapprove of that nearly as much. And I'm also concerned about what kind of barrier we're going to have. Is there going to be a 40-foot barrier for us also? I don't know. I guess I could go on, but I definitely am opposed to this development.
Thank you, Ms. Wallman. Not yet. You're the applicant, man.
Anybody else coming up?
No, but you're the applicant, so we'll get to you, and you'll be able to speak.
I'm not the applicant, I'm the landowner.
Rebuttal.
Rebuttal
comes. You guys come back up.
All right, I want to, since it doesn't seem like there's more public comments, Miss Madam Attorney, I just want to take a moment and just thank you folks. It got a little hairy there at the beginning, but I really do appreciate you guys abiding to the time. Very much appreciated. So I do want to express my gratitude to you and appreciation for that. At this moment, since there's no more public comment, we would like to bring the applicant to cross-examine. I'm pretty sure you got all the questions, but I've typed a few from them just to make sure that they get addressed. So thank you.
Yes, if you could, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go through them, and if I missed any, please feel free to
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Can we step out for just 1 second and ask the attorney to just remind the audience, because I think there's a lot of belief out there that tonight is a one and done, and tonight is all we're focused on in this quasi-judicial is future land use. So I think maybe if we could have a moment to remind about the extent of the process. Tonight is not the only one meeting. I've heard those concerns. Can you explain what future land use is? And then we did go over the calendar and the timeline of all the other public meetings that will happen because of this one item. But I think that we need to make sure we're all on that page before we go through and address individual infrastructure and those kinds of concerns. Can you help us out?
So even tonight, there are 2 items on this agenda that relate to this development, this property. The item that we're talking about now is the future land use map of the city of Newberry. Essentially, that map just says this is what we plan on using this land for in the future, whether it be ag or residential or planned development, what have you. That's this item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda will also relate to this property, and that will be the zoning right now of this property. So it will change the zoning from ag, as it currently is, to the proposed zoning. That is the second item on our agenda. Both of those items must go to the city commission before there is a final approval of them. So this is your first preliminary step on 2 steps that we're doing tonight. There are additionally multiple steps that our planning directors will be undertaking with the applicant in the meantime. So there will be a multitude of opportunities for people to come back and talk to not this board, but the commission about what it is that is going to occur with this property and whether or not this is a recommendation to the city commission on this item regarding future land use and on the next item regarding zoning.
Thank you. And just to furthermore, if I may, Madam Attorney, one of the comments was they wanted more time, to look at stuff, to see these things. This is just the first step, like Madam Attorney was saying, of many. Sidewalks, roads, all those concerns will get addressed. Right now, all we're discussing is turning it from ag to plant. That's the only thing on the agenda. All these other stuff of roads and infrastructure and whatnot, that comes on later on. Right now, what's before the judicial board is the change of the zone only. They're not telling you this is how many exactly we're going to do. It's just changing the zoning. Oh. Land use, sorry. The land use. I gotta be specific. All right, so yes, I list of questions, I'm pretty sure you have answers to.
So yes, Mr. Chair, this will, a lot of the items that were brought up regarding sidewalks, curbing, utilities, as you mentioned, this is just the beginning steps. Here, we're basically setting the initial instructions on how the development will be built further. And we will be back at several different stages to the board as far as construction plans go, plating, and so forth. So this is just setting the initial groundwork for the development. The existing yellow property that's to the south, that abuts County Road 337, and would border the southern side of the future Southwest 15th extension, is not part of this application. That is a separate landowner, and the future land use of that parcel is already residential low density, which allows 1 to 4 units an acre. And I believe, that project, I believe, is just there. It's not.
So to verify, the yellow is not in discussion.
That is correct.
It's everything highlighted in red.
That is correct.
Thank you.
But Chris, explain why that parcel is relevant to your application.
Yes. So when looking at comp plan changes or rezoning changes, you look at the adjacent zoning districts to make sure that there's compatibility so you're not spot zoning. And spot zoning, and Brian, feel free to jump in if I'm off on this. Spot zoning is where you basically take like a donut and you assume the center is a off zoning or an off land use compared to what's surrounding you. So you're kind of the odd apple out. And so that's what spot zoning is. In this case, there's low density residential abutting the property as well as abutting the east side of County Road 337. And additionally, this project or this property is within the urban service area, which is encouraging density within the city's urban service area. So this property will not be considered spot zoning or sprawl. So it's following the comp plan that the city already has in place. Now, as far as a more detailed plan, so through the process of land use and rezoning, a detailed plan is not required, just because you're going through the actual groundwork of a land use or zoning. And honestly, it's irrelevant at the moment, because if you don't get the land use or zoning, then the plan doesn't apply. Now, in a PD, which we're requesting, part of that requirement is a master plan, as John Paul mentioned, either a preliminary development plan, what we call a bubble plan, where kind of identifies certain pockets of where you're wishing to have a certain type of development. And it limits what you can put in those areas. Which, for example, on the east side, we're requesting attached and detached units, but on the west side of 337, we're only requesting detached. So going forward, those are the only type of products that could go forward. Now, in the land development code,
Excuse me, guys, I'm sorry, but we're gonna, I don't want to be the guy that says that we got to call order on this, but we got someone trying to make a presentation and answer your questions. So if we can have a little bit of respect for our applicant to go ahead and continue on.
now for the changing of code for a neighborhood workshop, that'll be up to the commission and the city staff to determine if that is appropriate. But in lieu of that, Brian and John Paul can give out my contact information, and I'll be willing to answer any questions or set up meetings with any of the residents that have concerns or would like more information about the development. For utilities, I know it was brought up from the capacity standpoint. The LDRs have not been adjusted, so the LDRs currently have a lower requirement for water and wastewater per ERU. And so in discussions with Public Works Director Jamie Jones, he requested that we perform the analysis off of 250 because they're slowly changing that requirement in the LDRs, as well as how the city's permit is evaluated with FDEP. So FDEP sets the groundwork for your capacity per residential unit, and so we're following those standards. Since these roadways are in the urban service area and the type of roadways that we're proposing in the PD will be curb and guttered, we will have sidewalks, they'll be pedestrian friendly. Now, since our intention is to have phase one on the east side of County Road 237, as part of the capacity and infrastructure improvements, not only will utilities be extended as needed, which will be at the developer's cost, Southwest 15th will also be extended to 230 or 337 as part of the improvements. So infrastructure will have to go in place before the development is improved, and those will all be handled at a later stage through the actual engineering construction plans, and they'll be permitted with not only the city but the county as well as other state agencies to make sure that the infrastructure is in place prior to construction. And the development will be connected to the city's wastewater and water, so there won't be individual wells or septic systems for each house. I believe that was all the topics, unless, Mr. Chair, you have any other ones that I may have missed?
I mean, other than, the few of them have been like the crime, but that's not something that we can really narrow down on this particular, when we're talking about what's on the topic right now of changing.
So the idea is that we're not proposing either workforce housing or low-income housing. So this will be a standard subdivision. There'll be no government-funded or income-restricted residents or neighborhoods in this development. Yes.
And then just concerns with, really hate going back and forth on this, but concerns with like wildlife and stuff was also.
Yes, so 2 environmental reports were performed, a phase 1 and I believe a phase 2 was performed on the property, which those came back with no significant issues. If they did come back with issues, they would have to be remediated before construction could start. Now, the development that was mentioned towards the Easton Sports Complex, so the developer had entered into an agreement with the local farmer that as the project was being constructed, the local farmer had the ability to farm that land. Now, this may be an option for this going forward too, that as development moves, local farming can still go on. And this will be a several-year project. Not all the homes will be constructed at once. This will be a multi-year, probably a 10 to 15-year project to be completely built out. And with the density and the total acreage, it's about 3.3 units per acre, which is actually towards the lower side of what you see for developments, especially ones that have recently been underway in the city.
It's like you know me oh too well because that was actually one of the questions I had. So. was, what's the equation of 3.3 per acre is what I got as
Yes.
well. All right.
So I believe and again, if any of the citizens would like to contact me directly, I can hand out my card at the end, or the city staff can feel free to share my contact information.
Thank you. Staff at this point. That's what I was gonna say. Staff, did you have anything to say to cross-examine before we get into where the members can ask questions?
Did you want me to use this opportunity to address some of the concerns that the residents brought up during public comment? Yes?
Yeah, as far as
All
like the infrastructure, I mean, he did touch on them a little bit, but if you, as from a city perspective,
Yep.
or
Absolutely. Will do, Mr. Chair. So one thing that is currently happening is the development agreement isn't final at this point. It is a working document, so before the city commission hears this item, we should have a finalized developer agreement, ironing out some of the more specific details to address some of the concerns that were brought up today, as well as some of the goals that the city is looking to achieve with development in the city of Newberry. The number of residents was a issue brought up. So this is proposing 850 units. Census Bureau, and I don't know what the latest Beaver numbers are, but average household is 2.79 persons. That's about 2,300 people that will be added to the city, which the latest Beaver numbers came back with 8,066 residents. And I mentioned this in the data analysis that our environmental or our parks and open space, future element of our comprehensive plan has shuffleboards at 10,000. So we'll finally get our first shuffleboard court here in Newberry. But it is a lot of residents.
I love you, Chief.
It is a lot of residents. Trip rates, traffic. So the analysis that was provided was based on IET Trip Generation Manual 10th edition. There's an 11th edition, but trip rates for residential have decreased from the studies that ITE has received between the 10th and 11th. So the numbers are actually higher than what they would be with the current Trip Generation Manual. Also, all the trips are calculated with the highest trip rate, which is single family. There's multifamily proposed in here, which has a lower trip rate, which was not used, so we're accounting for the most intense. And it's a very scary number, but you have to remember this is spread out over the whole day, and this is not the individual that's making these trips. These are the trips that are generated by the units. The number is, I think, 8,024 daily trips, average daily trips. These are people leaving their home. These are people arriving at their homes. These are deliveries to their home. This is the trash man. We don't have milkman anymore, but back in the day, it would account for the milkman. But the most important one, to me personally, and this is based on perception, is that PM peak hour, 4 to 6. Want to get home so I can watch my Seinfeld or whatever it is that I do at home, because everybody gets out at 5. It's unfortunate, but we should probably plan for that a little bit better. They do it for schools. They have alternating start times for schools to avoid that traffic jam. But everybody gets out at 5, so everybody's on the road at 5. And so that PM peak hour number is pretty important. And it's about 1 per unit, so it's 850 additional trips that are going to be added to all those road segments in that area. Very short portion, because not a lot of folks are going to be using 15th Ave. They're all going to be going to Newberry Road. So it is an increase in traffic. The traffic, we will be asking for a study to be done before the final development plan. That is one of the requirements written into the code, so more detailed information will be provided. At the moment, what we have is the equivalent of a traffic statement, just saying this is the number of trips that will be. Existing uses and like the horse farm that are being encroached upon. The board has seen these in the past. The board has accommodated the neighbors or heard their issues being raised. An additional buffer has been provided in the past by the developer. willing to be a good neighbor and to work with the residents that are there today to provide a congruent development type that's transitions well from ag to residential. Right now, as you can see from the map, we have 10,000 square foot lots, and then we have acres of land with one house on it. And so there is that transition that happens there, and this is kind of bringing those lots further out. But public outreach is a thing. Public outreach happens in other places. We currently in Newberry don't have public outreach, but smaller cities that have smaller staff do put the onus on the applicant to conduct those hearings. Sometimes you have civic associations. It makes it a little bit easier, but generally there's some sort of statement that's like a sworn statement that's provided by the developer that they made their best efforts to reach out to the community, to hold a public hearing, maybe here at Municipal Hall, and to just educate everybody on what the project is and what they can expect and what the time range for complete build-out would be. Road capacity on Newberry Road is an issue. There's an FDOT project for the two-lane one-way pairs that's going to be going in. That intersection that would be providing what seems to be the main access for the two developments as they straddle 337 is where the roundabout will be. There will not be a traffic light added there. I'm very pleased with that addition because there is a lower crash incident with roundabouts. It's much safer. But that is a project that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is something that's in BD&E at the moment and is something that's 27, 28-ish generally. So that's actually sooner than you think. So that capacity will be coming to those roads as far. But I don't think the citizens' concern was necessarily that there's capacity, but those trips are being added to the road, that they're going to have to compete with other users of the roadway. Duly noticed, I had the pleasure of speaking with some of the folks here today. Very, very cool people, and I'm so happy that they were able to make it here to express their concerns. And the consensus was that it was a strange occurrence of events, a strange series of events. Everything was duly noticed. Everything was properly noticed. So this is a duly noticed public hearing. However, we did have to, maybe the mail was delayed. I'm not sure why they received them on Tuesday, but they do go out on Friday. And so it would seem that it would be normal for them to receive it on the following Tuesday. It is a lot of information, and that's why public outreach is usually a good idea to conduct prior to having a large development like this. We did have to remove the signs, but they did go back up just because we don't want them flying in somebody's window. Water demand discrepancy. So yes, our comp plan has 150 gallons per day for a residential unit. Public Works has done a study. 250 gallons per day is the new adopted. It hasn't been amended in our comp plan. We're working on that right now, so we'll have updated elements in the comp plan coming before the Planning Board and the City Commission in the near future. Concurrency generally. Concurrency is a balancing act that is difficult. It is hard. We are working through our comprehensive plan right now, and it is something that we're looking to address. This is conceptual that we're looking at today. This is not a final plan. This is not something that gets built and approved tomorrow when everybody leaves this room. So we're looking at the idea of having 850 additional units here. Is that something that we can live with? Is that something that works for the city of Newberry? And that's the question. I don't have crash data on Newberry, unfortunately, but one of the things I was impressed with at looking at bike and ped accidents for Newberry, which is something that I look into, not many here, so that's pretty cool. But car accidents, I don't know what the totals are for those. It's something I can look at. I think FDOT publishes that data, so it's something that we can present to the City Commission in the future or the board in the future, and make available to residents. Crime, more people, more crime is just a natural statistic that kind of feeds into itself. Preservation of agriculture is both something that I think the commission has expressed and residents have expressed, and maybe there's more ponderance we can place on that to achieve that. I think we did a really good job with the small-scale rural subdivision and preserving that appearance. I think Hal Plantation has done a really good job at preserving the rural aspect of their community, while also having, providing that residential development aspect to it. A wildlife study is required prior to the final development plan approval. Anything over 50 acres has to provide a wildlife study. The environmental studies that were provided with the application only address pollutant concerns. It doesn't address wildlife, so there's an additional study that will be provided in addition to the environmental study. And mainly what that addresses is that this site used to be an old field dust cropping site, and so there was a Superfund site that was excavated and remediated once upon a time, and so that's covered in those environmental studies. Buffering, the code requires a minimum of 10 feet. That's all that's being asked for today, or being included in the developer agreement. Something that we can look at increasing on certain portions, or amending our code where we have single-family abutting agriculture where there's a more intense buffer in those scenarios. Spot zoning is, I don't like using spot zoning. Some of the great cities just have random land uses, and they work really well because of those random land uses. But in the state of Florida, it's adopted policy that spot zoning is frowned upon. But spot zoning is not having single family next to multifamily. That's just transitional of the same land use. That is a natural progression of land use, actually, and something that should be encouraged and not discouraged. And I think what the concern here more today is sprawl and less spot zoning. And it does happen to be located in the urban services area, which encourages this type of development. Residential surrounding what seems to be a commercial core, and so it's a natural progression for development like this to move into the town. Whether this is a Picasso of a landmass is the right way for it to move forward is a question that we need to examine. This might not be a cohesive amalgamation of land, but it is the request that's before the board right now, and it does satisfy all the minimum requirements of the code. I think I covered everything. If I missed anything, let me know. Dennis.
I think I might have the most up-to-date information on 337, and that's probably the main issue, besides just having neighbors when you live in the country. It's the state of 337, I think, is probably what's on most folks' mind here. And we're in prolonged conversations with the BOCC. It's a county road, doesn't belong to the city. So we have to work with the county on that. And we've heard 2 or 3 times here tonight about, well, the city needs to build the infrastructure first before we allow the development. And I certainly understand that view. But it's definitely a rock and a hard place, because if the city of Newberry spends $5 million to fix a county road before the developer comes in, well, then the developer didn't participate, then the city of Newberry taxpayers paid for a road that a developer gets to benefit from. So our traditional model is to partner with the developer and say to the developer, if you're going to bring in this increased traffic, you have to take on the lion's share of the burden of the infrastructure that's going to need. I wouldn't ask people in Newberry to build a road so that a developer could come in and put the houses in. So, but in order for that philosophy to work, you have to have a developer in front of you that is willing to participate. And in order for the developer to be able to do that, there has to be a level of density that makes the profits margin work. Someone said they like the Lakota development. I like the Lakota development too. I would argue Lakota development is closer to spot zoning than this is, because that's dropping down a neighborhood out in our green reserves. that level of development it's not putting one house every 3 acres. It doesn't generate the kind of numbers that allow a developer to be a significant partner in paving a road. Because what I want for 337 is wider lanes, bike lanes. I like those curves to be banked, engineered correctly so that when people go into them, they don't shoot off to the side. I have yet to find another road in Alachua County that has a higher fatality rate than 337. The county is aware of that. A county commissioner last week of her own volition brought up the need to fix 337. Now that may not seem like a big deal to those of us who live on 337 because we've known that for a long time. But in my world, getting the county to even acknowledge that 337 exists and belongs to them, this is a huge step forward. that the county commission is now acknowledging that that's a dangerous road and we need to do something about it. We have a unique opportunity, potentially, to partner with the county to finally address 337. I don't want to ruin those negotiations by speaking out of turn right now and putting the cart before the horse. But I want to try to explain, you can leave here still disagreeing, but I want you to try to explain from our perspective why the P&Z doesn't recommend, usually, and the commission to date hasn't put the burden on existing Newberry residents to pay for those kinds of infrastructure improvements that are being brought on by new developments. We want the new developments to take the lion's share of the cost for that development. We're still talking about whether or not we should have workshops. We can have workshops. I take Mr. Hornsby's comment, but this applicant is here about future land use. The only question we're deciding tonight is, do we see residential in this area? Future land use. Is this an area that we see residential happening? Then they'll go to about zoning. Then they're going to go to 2 different commission meetings. Then they're going to come back here and they're going to talk about platting. They're going to come back. They're going to talk about site plans. They're going to be here about a dozen times from this moment to when this whole process is through. And every single question, every single step is going to be looking at one narrow piece so that we get it right. So that we hear, look, I'm worried about 337. I'm worried about the buffering. Okay, well, let's address the buffering. Let's talk about how we can make this where it's something that we can all work at. And we've had those workshops, but this is also a public workshop. And we're going to have multiple, every single issue is going to be seen. They don't all come to the P&Z, and they don't all have 2 readings. But there's going to be about 20 different public hearings where we talk about this one application, different pieces of it over the next year or 2. So there are ample opportunities. Every developer has done just what Chris has done. Here's my cell phone. Call me up. They go out to the property. They walk. They hear your concerns. We come back in. This is the process by which we maintain our small town feel, because we listen to each other and we have those conversations. And then we try to do our best to make sure we put in all of those concerns to get something that's a good product for everybody. So I can't make any promises about 337. One thing I haven't heard the applicant or our staff do, and I've heard from the audience, is the belief that there's going to be 850 houses tomorrow. And this process isn't going to be over tomorrow. This process is going to take a year to work out all the details, and then they're going to start building if they get approval. And then it's 10 to 20 years to build out all of that if the market keeps going the way it's going now. If there's dips in the valley, right, then that goes to the 20-year mark. So I understand the number is big. I understand the fear. I'm a 4th-generation Newberry resident. I live on 337. I have a cattle farm here. I teach in this community. I get every single concern you have. However, this is the process by which we have to mitigate those concerns and to have these kinds of conversations as a community so that we all get a product that we can live with at the end. So I'll bring up the workshops to the commission, see if that's something. We've tried it before, varying degrees of success. Largely, they've said we've got a lot of public workshops. They're part of the process. They're built in. I know that you're dealing with some other government entities that maybe move at a faster pace, but we generally put the developer through a ringer out here in Newberry. And you could ask Chris that because he's left here upset many times, you know, with the things that we've asked and the questions that we've asked and the time that we've asked to think about things. So there's two sides to every coin. Again, you don't have to agree with me. I'm just trying to explain the other side of the coin tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that being said, thank you, staff. Thank you to the applicant. At this moment, I will ask the members of the decision-making body to ask questions of the staff, applicant, and the participants. I'm not gonna put you on the spot, Ms. Polo, so anybody that wants to speak up, Ms. Polo, you can wait a little bit if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to collect my thoughts a little bit before I respond, please.
To give my board a little bit more time, I'll shoot off the cuff real quick here.
I have some too.
What?
So I have some too. I can help them buy some time.
Yeah, buy some time. This might be a question for staff. In regards to PR plan, or the plan development, sorry. Can you explain a little bit what's the difference between plan development and what we're seeing as low density, which is the property below? What would be the key differences there?
Yes, so Brian may be able to answer this better than I can, but planned residential development allows you to do unique lot configurations, to have a more creative use of land to address certain issues. Sometimes you will have certain land formations that require you to cluster your lots in certain areas, or certain stormwater requirements that require you to cluster your lots in certain areas. There may be a number of reasons why you would want different lot sizes, but ultimately that's what it allows you to do, is create a your own zoning in your own land use regulations, essentially, within a framework. The low density has a set maximum density, which is 4 units per acre, and it has certain zoning districts that are allowed in it, and then it's fixed with that structure. And those would be different variations of single family.
Additionally, the permitted uses are different between the two as well. So for low density in the LDRs, there's a list of uses that you can have by right. In a planned development, we're able to negotiate those with the city. If the city doesn't feel certain uses are applicable for this area, then they ask us to exclude those. Unlike with the low density, the LDRs identify those specific uses, and staff cannot request the removal of those.
All right, I appreciate that. Just wanted to get that out, since people see, if they're looking at this, they're seeing low density and then they're seeing planned residential. I'm pretty sure that's understanding like what would be the big difference there. So thank you for sharing that. All right, I bought you guys some time.
I guess I'll start. I think I don't really have many questions for the applicant. I just want to address some of the citizens' concerns. As far as the mayor kind of spoke pretty vivid about infrastructures, and like I said, we're not really discussing all that because the developer should take that kind of hit instead of the citizen. I mean, you guys want that to be fixed and want that to be addressed, but you don't want to have to pay for it either. As far as the time frame in which you got informed, the storm kind of affected that pretty bad, you know what I mean, not having the right information, but this is not the end-all, end-all. We address these meetings a lot in big developments, and just show up to the commission meetings, to every different thing that comes up, and voice your concerns, because we may not hear everything every night, so still voice your opinion. And as far as that go, like I said, it's just, I don't really see much to really combat right now, so. Anybody else?
Thank you. Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead. They were hesitant. I was trying to buy more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To follow along with what the Vice Chair is saying here, I wrote down all of my concerns as I was hearing this as a resident of the community, And every time one of you guys said something, I put a little check mark next to it. Like we're all on the same page with the concerns here. My one question that I do have is pertaining to the area that is closer to town. Is there going to be any future requirement for these parcels of land as they, are sold or as they are passed down generationally? Is there going to be a requirement for them to be rezoned in this same capacity?
Are you referring to the zoning being similar to adjacent zoning?
Yes.
Once they establish the planned residential development, that's kind of, they set their own lot sizes, and that makes it a unique development and is typically not compatible with other zoning. So in that particular one, there are 2,000 square foot lots for townhouses, which, in the multifamily, what's the minimum lot size for multifamily?
Off my head, I don't remember.
Yeah. But that's the advantage of using planned residential development, is that it allows you to kind of set your own lot sizes specific to the development that you're doing. And so because of that uniqueness, unless there's a new zoning district that's similar to what they are proposing today, they would probably not transition zoning without some sort of cause to do so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think piggybacking off of that, because I think where you were headed with this is because of the unique shape of this development, what consideration is being taken for the property owners and properties that are within and around the boundaries of this development?
So those would be considered part of the perimeter. So by code, there's the minimum 10-foot buffer that's required around them. So those would be, although they're internal to the acreage, they're still considered a perimeter. Now, as far as they would just remain as is, as far as zoning and land use, that would be up to each individual landowner. But whatever access they have now will remain the same. Utility easements will have to stay the same, unless during the design, the city utility department, Public Works requests change for maintenance or something on their aspect. But most of the time, those utility easements will remain as is, same with the egress.
And the current properties within the planned development proposal, the ones that are near it, like the one that's a rectangle up near the north, they have their own ingress, egress that isn't blocked or changed by this.
You're referring to the parcels to the east and west that are outside of the?
Yes.
Yes. However, they, most of their, I guess all of their access should be from Newberry Road. But if there is an egress easement through the parcel, it either has to remain as is, or the developer and the external landowner have to negotiate on adjusting the access.
So one of the further concerns I have is that 337 runs through the properties within this. And I know that it was discussed that there was a potential for a crosswalk. I guess I question the safety of that with the traffic on 337. So how will, I'm not sure my question, how it's gonna come out.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So staff is, because we didn't show open space on the eastern parcel, open space is still going to be required on the eastern parcel. And the intention is that, yes, there is County Road 337 as a divider. So the eastern development, or the eastern phase, will be self-sustaining. And then depending on, going through the improvements of 15th and 337 with the county may require, a roundabout or different modes of operation at that intersection, which would improve pedestrian safety.
Thank you.
I'm just going to ask, even though I know the mayor is about to like slam me and tell me that that's not part of this, but will the residents have to plug into water if water is put in there by the city? Will residents from the surrounding areas now have to go from well water or septic to that? I know. It's just something that's been boggling me ever since a resident brought it up.
Yes, City and Water, this area is also under Florida Co-op. We're trying to work on getting them on City of Newberry Electric.
Well, my concern is like if they currently have city water, I mean, they have well water and septic, will they have to plug into now city since this is going to be all city?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So the residents that currently live there will have to?
No, when
I don't think you're understanding the question he's asking, right?
Yeah.
The current residents there, like the current, well,
Yeah, no, so existing residents that are in proximity to this development
right,
would not be required to connect to water or sewer or change their electric connection or provider in any way. Occasionally, when a development goes in, if water and sewer is brought across currently unserved parcels, there is a provision in the code that can require it, but usually that's not in as rural an area as this with large parcel. These are 5 and 10 acre parcels for the most part surrounding. That would be within a more urbanized area. We've got a few areas in the city that still, even though they're on the quarter acre, they have well and septic, or well, maybe not well, but septic. As a holdover in the past, or maybe when the utility lines were not originally run past their property. Someday in the future, when, if we did extend a sewer line across it, again, in the urbanized area of the city, not in the larger parcel areas, then they would be required to connect. But out here, no. On a 5 acre parcel, they're never going to be required to connect to city water or wastewater.
All right, thank you.
Unless they request it.
And
Additionally,
I'll apologize again for that question, even though it's really not.
Additionally, some of the parcels that are internal are still county, not city.
All right.
So there's that kind of component as well.
And then my other question is really for the applicant. This is a very lengthy process. So let's say everything worked out magically and everything gets approved, and we're here next year. Done all your plans. With the two-way pairs that we're experiencing, saying 27, 28 now, it seems like it's been pushed a little bit further, and with my faith in FDOT, I feel like it'll get pushed again. How does this project coincide really with because my fear is I know it's not 850 homes tomorrow or even next year, but with the traffic situation we have going on, especially the traffic on Newberry and Trenton coming in and going out, how does this coincide for the year 27, 28, 29? I mean, are you talking about there's going to be another 100 homes in 27, another 100 homes in 28? I know it's hard to predict this, but I'm just trying to get the traffic timeline.
So, and Brian and John Paul may have a better idea of the number of homes that are currently going through the city. My understanding is they're in the range of 150 to 200 a year, and that includes all the developments, so not just one single development. So if you take that and proportion it out, I would say you'd probably see maybe 50 homes a year if you look at those just with this development. Now, the permitting process and the traffic study will still have to go through DOT, and DOT will take it into, there'll be a two-step process with DOT. They'll have the interim condition, and then until they do the roadway improvements that they're proposing, then they'll have the final condition of how they would like the roadways configured. So there'll be kind of a two-step process with DOT.
All right, thank you. Did you have?
I did. It was my turn.
Oh, well, hold on a second. Anybody, before I hand it off to the mayor, any other questions that, not at the moment?
I had a couple of technical questions. Board Member Baker brought up the crosswalk, and I know that getting a golf cart crossing across a state road is challenging, but 337 is a county road, and it seems like Newberry is a golf cart community now. I can see most of the folks that live west of 337 are going to want to drive their kids very conveniently across 15th straight to the elementary school. And I know that the traffic congestion, we actually want to encourage that because it's a little bit easier to get golf carts in and out. And we're working with the school board on a secondary entrance for golf carts. There's so much going on in the city of Newberry, it's hard to explain everything all in one meeting. But so there's a lot of incentive to do that. What's the chances, and this may be for our staff, same challenge to get a golf cart crossing across a county road as with the state, or is that an internal conversation that we could have with the county and the developer? Seems like golf cart crossings are a matter of lights, signage. I think you're getting close enough to the Newberry's urban core at that point where you might be able to get away with a raised, one of those raised like speed humps where it really kind of forces you to slow down. That's where we'd want people to start slowing down anyway. Speak to me a little bit about that, Brian or Jake.
Brian, if you want.
Or you've got experience?
So with the county, it'll depend on the speed of the road. The county would actually have to slow down the posted speed on 337. Now, as far as the type of improvements at the intersection, it really would just depend on the coordination effort between the developer, the county, and the city to determine what's necessary. A raised intersection on this type of road would actually be, if they keep the speed the same, would be detrimental.
Sure.
Now, adding some sort of calming effect to reduce the speed towards the intersection, like with a roundabout or something like that, would improve and allow for the ability to have golf carts cross it. It really just depends on the speed of what the county will allow 337 to be reduced to, which would be in the 30-mile-an-hour range.
Okay.
For golf carts.
You agree with everything there? On your density number, which was 3.3 or 3.4?
3.3 per acre.
Is that the entire, is that townhouses and single family? Or is it 3.3 for the single family and townhouses of a different metric?
So with the PD documents, we are capping the development at 850. So that is the entire development. Over on the east side, we have identified, I believe it's 260 maximum units on the east side. So whether they're attached or detached, that is the cap of the number of units.
Okay, so the 3.3
is the entire.
Is the entire thing.
Including detached and attached units.
Right, so that's an important distinction in my mind because we generally hit 3.6, 3.7 in single-family units.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, attached, you're going to have a much higher density by design.
Correct.
And one of the things that Newberry does need is affordable housing, right? And this is one of the ways to go about achieving that. So when it comes to the question of density, if the townhouses are in that number, then I would say I'd be interested to know what the single family on the west side, what the density there is. And you don't have to do that number tonight, but if you could have that before the commission meeting, because those are two different types of development,
Yes.
and it seems disingenuous to lump them together to me when it comes to density questions.
So on the east side, we're at 6.6. And that's just the acreage and the total number. And then the,
Doing some fast math.
You're a 3.5.
3.5. Okay. And could you go back to no, that's it, the map. My question, and then a couple of the board members were talking about this as well. I hope I'm talking loud enough. This in particular seems to be a strange configuration. So
Yes.
these little prongs here are gonna have future land use, but these are already existing parcels. So what do you envision, is there gonna be a townhouse that kind of pops up in between here? How's that working?
No, so based on the existing plat, those are public right-of-way.
Okay.
So when the plat is vacated, the standard is that half the right-of-way goes to the neighboring landowner.
Okay.
So those squares, I guess you can call them, are current residents that own their tract, and then the neighboring right-of-way to the right, to the east and west of them, their land will actually be increased because they get half.
Because they get half.
Right.
Okay, so we don't conceive of any building happening in between these.
No.
Those will all be easements, future roadways, those
Correct.
kinds of things.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I would on echo. I appreciate the application coming forward as a PD. That gives the city a much better opportunity to negotiate with a developer, to have these kinds of conversations, to figure out we like this, we don't like that. So to all the questions about the procedure, this is the best procedure for us to hear your concerns and then put those concerns into the plan, which again will take a long period of time. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions for staff or the applicant or participants?
Mr. Chair, I have one further question.
Yes.
Could city staff put like an example of what 3.5 houses per acre? Is that more like Countryway or more like Newberry Oaks?
So I recently did the density calculation for Newberry Oaks, and that's at a 2.7 units per acre. That's incorporating their stormwater into that as well. And circulation, roads, everything. They're 2.7 per acre. And I think with the calculation for Chris for the west part of this development, it's actually, that number is actually a little bit lower because the overall is 3.3. So I think that number is a little bit closer to below 3 on the west side. It's working on it right now.
I was also going to point out for the multifamily side, it's 6.6. That's actually below the threshold for standard multifamily zoning, which would be 8 units per acre. So it's still a little on the low side for multifamily.
Yes, sorry about that, Mr. Chair. The west side would be 3.1.
Sorry, I was like staring at the map and the Picasso. All right, guys, if you don't have any other questions, final arguments can be made by the applicant and the staff. And final arguments?
No final arguments.
No. Okay. So with that, the city attorney already advised in general. We can enter into deliberation, guys. So I have a lot of concerns. I'm just gonna say right now, the schools are the biggest concerns for me. Right, but that's not tonight. But the thing is, it's changing it from ag to PRD.
At the rate at which this is probably going to be done, I don't see a reason not to approve. So.
Ms. Polo, do you have?
Mr. Chair, I have concerns, and I know that that gets worked out later. For the purposes of tonight's, like, this particular
Right.
review, do I see this as a neighborhood to feed into Newberry? Yes, it's close to town. It's in fitting with our current codes, or our future comprehensive plan, sorry. I think that a lot of this other stuff is gonna have to be ironed out
Yeah.
in the next stages. As far as is this a viable place for a neighborhood? Yeah? Yes.
I want to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna address the public on something.
Yeah, I
Go
want to
ahead.
address the public. We don't want to be a city that just shuns people away. I've been here over 25 years, and a lot of people that you spoke up said they've been here a year, and you guys have moved here. The city speaking up for each other is the reason why a lot of people moving here. And if you look at the hurricane and at the rate in which this area gets hit, you're pretty much in a better area in Alachua County, this area. So moving to Newberry and having the same passion you guys have for each other and speaking upon issues is something you need to keep. So other people that do move here, that same reason you guys moved here, are moving here for that reason. It's 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. They have to go somewhere. And if you guys voice your opinions and concerns, we can hear them and address them and move forward, and not just shun each other for not moving to Newberry. And having valid reasons is valid, but we need to speak in a concern that we all can grow together. Because growth is coming. And whether it's going to happen now or 20 years down the line, it's how it grows. You still guys have a voice in it. So don't feel as though we're not listening and we don't hear it just because we might approve or disapprove something. But this stuff is still going to come back and get reapproved for different issues, and then you can still voice those concerns. So that's just my spiel.
My address, thank you, Vice Chair Long. Vice Chair Long says it, and it's very true. And the mayor hit it on point. Mr. Potts knows how difficult we can be and how strenuous we can be on a developer. We don't make decisions very lightly. That's one of the reasons why I feel like they come to us with a plan development versus, hey, we just want to change it. No. They go through a series of, JB Pro is not cheap. They're spending a really good amount of money to make sure that, listen, Newberry is an up-and-coming city. And they really try hard to appease us, but at the same token, they could have just came in here and said, hey, we just want to turn this from this to that. And they've really taken the time to really show us, even in this stage where we're just voting on changing it from ag to planned development. Like Ms. Polo said, is this in line? It's right. I mean, it's just literally one road crossing over. But I want to mention that this is not the end-all be-all right here, guys. This is just saying that we're allowing, instead of agriculture, that someone can build here homes. How those homes are constructed, how they look, what road goes where, that comes on later. This is where more meetings will come into place. Right now, someone's asking us for permission to turn it from ag to, they want to make homes there. And I think that's pretty much what Ms. Polo is addressing. So tonight's vote is not that it's over, they're going to build 850 houses. No. It's just changing the land use. Am I correct, Madam Attorney? You are. Okay. So really don't want people coming outside with pitchforks. But the truth of the matter is as a judicial board at the moment, there's no evidence against the fact of changing this that I can see. There's no hardship or there's nothing there's no evidence, no substantial or competent evidence to tell me we cannot change it. Now, if this was, we're talking about what kind of houses, the designs, what they're gonna look like, all this stuff, where the roads are going, all these particulars that we were just worried about, that would be a different story. But right now, there's nothing to say that this can't be turned into homes. So that's what we're voting on tonight. Ms. Baker, did you have anything to add? All right. After deliberations, a vote can be taken. We can approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. Once again, we are only voting on changing it from ag to planned development.
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Vice Chair Long. Do we have a second? Is staff looking for an approval with conditions, or were you looking just for a straight approval here because it's just planned? I didn't see any conditions on there.
All conditions are baked into the resolution.
Okay.
I'm sorry, ordinance. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I second the motion.
I have a second from Ms. Polo. All right, do we have any comments on the motion? All right, public comments on the motion. All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No.
All right, I got 3-1 on the vote from changing to planned development. All right, Madam Attorney, can you read into the ordinance? We're on number 6, right? Yeah.
So like we discussed, this is the zoning change associated with the future land use amendment we just did. So this is ordinance number 2022-47, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida relating to the rezoning of approximately 258.3 contiguous acres, more or less, pursuant to an application by the property owner of said acreage, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from agricultural A and residential mixed single-family mobile home RSF MH2 zoning district to the planned residential development PRD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, tax parcels 02514-000-000-02508-002-000, 02522-000-000, 02523-001-000, 02523-001-001, 02538-004-001, 02538-004-002, 02538-006-000, 02538-006-002, and a portion of 01981-001-001, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Can you read the numbers one more time? No.
I actually cannot.
I want to let the public know real quick too. This is going before, I should have mentioned this earlier. This is going before the City Commission will be hearing this on October 24th. For the first reading. Oh, actually, yeah, for that one and this one. So please come to that meeting as well. These are the series of meetings. This is what a concern was, is there needs to be more. Well, there is more, and there's your next step after this one. Sorry, JP. You can.
You need to do ex parte communication.
Ex parte communication. Ms. Polo.
I've had none.
Long.
I have none.
I have none.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you.
As soon as the presentation is up and ready to go, I'll introduce it. But essentially, this is the rezoning component of the request before you. Remarkably similar presentation. It is all the same data and information. The only difference between the land use and this is that the rezonings pertaining to our regulations, where the land use is something that gets transmitted to the state for their review. Attached to the rezoning is the developer agreement. So I had mentioned some of the conditions in the land use presentation. However, those are tied to the rezoning. We'll be looking at presenting these in a more compact manner in the future, so that they would be possibly one presentation. But let's get into it. Thank you for your patience. So this will be, as Madam City Attorney has mentioned, rezoning from agricultural and our residential mixed-use district, which allows for single-family mobile homes on the previously discussed property, 258 acres, to planned residential development. This is the general location of the property in the city limits. Here are the boundaries of the property, intersecting adjacent streets, as well as some of the adjacent county properties, and then one county property in the middle. There's current zoning districts, agricultural on the west side, and on the east side, there's a small sliver of that RSFMH2 zoning on that east side, which is Area C, where the townhouses will be located, or single-family attached. They're proposing to change the zoning all to planned residential development. Again, this is the preliminary development plan that shows the allocation of land uses and circulation of the site. Again, phase 1, the open space, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 will include all of the townhouses on the east side.
That's the bottom part you're talking about.
337. Here's the internal circulating roads as well as the southwest 15th Ave that will need to be improved for the development. Again, we have Florida vernacular as a requirement in our code for multifamily. This is not something the board likes, it's something that they can change if they prefer a different one. The applicant, in the past, we've honored alternate designs that are of greater quality, equal or greater quality than Florida vernacular. Florida vernacular establishes like a baseline. We won't accept something less than that, just to get something proper. So as discussed previously, they have the preliminary development plan, the final development plan, multiple hearings throughout all that process. Transmittal to the state for the flu. That doesn't occur with the land use, or with the zoning. The zoning will just tag along with the future land use. This is the first of 3 hearings, so we'll be back for more. Again, we're still finalizing conditions in the developer agreement. Developer agreements connected with the rezoning. Some of the conditions that are outside of the normal are traffic calming, as well as allocating some of the open space to Area C, or to construct that crosswalk. Find the request consistent with the land development regulation comprehensive plan, and at the pleasure of the board, you may approve conditions or deny the completion of presentation.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Bless you. The applicant.
Keep the heart going, right? Chris, can you check and make sure your microphone's on?
I would say, does somebody want to check on the gentleman?
I'll go in the bathroom.
All right, Chris, it's all you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Potts with JB Pro again. We had our full presentation during the last item, so we're here to address any questions that the board may have.
All right. Is there any public comments?
Again, my name is Paul Hornby, resident of Newberry for 35 years. Just a couple comments, and this gets very confusing for the common person. You guys deal with this day in and day out, so excuse my ignorance. But maybe one solution for the discussions about potential crime and things like that why don't you do what you do with the schools? You're gonna get school concurrence, right? The school board's gonna tell you, yeah, we have capacity, we don't have capacity. Why don't you add a section in your application where you reach out to ASO and the fire department, ambulance services, things of that nature, to see if they do have capacity to handle additional needs. I think that would be a simple solution. It might, calm people down about that. The other thing, and I was going to talk about, and I'll have to, I guess, at the next meeting bring this up, but there are still a lot of environmental concerns on this property. I know staff mentioned it briefly, basically that it was all cleaned up, but if you have the time to read the 500-page environmental assessment, there's still concerns there about some levels of some of the chemicals that were found just recently. So I'll touch on that in more detail later. I just wanted to get back to this whole process, and I appreciate, Mr. Mayor, your comments. You talk about, well, this is just the beginning of the long process, but the fact of the matter is these are huge dominoes at the front end of this process that you guys are starting to tip forward, okay? You're agreeing to this, you're gonna recommend to the city commission to agree to this. Processes start with Tallahassee. You talk that this is very broad terms, but in fact, there is a lot of specificity already to this report, or to the application. 850 homes, 10-foot buffers, where the pipes are gonna be located coming through the property, things of that nature. So to say this is very general, and I get things will get, more specific as time goes on, but there is some specificity already. So by approving these things, we are somewhat approving, what they're asking for. The issues with the roads, DOT, county, I certainly understand that, and that does bring up the concern that, say this all goes forward and they agree in their application that, yeah, they'll build this beautiful sidewalk. Sorry, I'm a little tired.
Is it green?
No, it's not.
No, it's green.
There it is.
So it's hard for us because we can hear you fine, but the people
Okay.
back there can't, and people watching at home can't.
Okay. So they'll agree, yes, you need a sidewalk along State Road 26 to get into town to enjoy the historic district and all that. But then it takes a long time, and you all agree to that, it gets approved, and then DOT, it takes a long time to engage with DOT, and they come back and say, no, that's not possible. And we're stuck with that. I've seen that play out before, so I know my time's up, I want to be respectful, but I just think that just saying this is very simple and still very broad, and no commitments are being made, I'm just concerned that these are big dominoes that you're starting to start this process and concurring with this, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's for public comment. At this point, the applicant has an opportunity to cross-examine or address staff. Cross-examine, are you waiving?
We waive.
All right. At this point, the decision-making body, we can ask questions. Ms. Pohl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually not sure who to address this question to. So not everybody jump up at once and answer me, okay? These environmental concerns that the last public comment addressed, are the current properties affected by these environmental concerns as well? Does anyone know?
I'll probably defer to Chris since he's probably more familiar with this study than I am.
Sorry, Chris.
But what do you mean by current properties? The properties that are within the project area?
I'm sorry to say, the properties adjacent to the proposed subdivision.
Gotcha.
Are they facing any concerns due to the Superfund site that was remediated? If we're hearing that there are chemicals coming back into play here, are the current landowners around that affected as well?
So based on the report, yes, they have identified some chemicals, but when they evaluate it from that level, they're to the point where they're not harmful. I mean, the soil is going to identify, is going to retain some of the chemicals throughout the years, regardless of what the remediation is. It's just at what level those chemicals are being identified as. Now, as far as the surrounding properties, the study excluded those. Fortunately, I can't answer what those soils or what underneath those external properties have.
Thank you. My follow-up to that is, well, I guess it doesn't really apply to the rezoning, so I'll save that. I'll save that for one of the following meetings. So, thank you.
He will. He yelled at me the last meeting. I was like,
I want to speak to the gentleman that spoke just now. A lot of the developers that come to these meetings, there's nothing simple about this process. And a lot of times developers come with developer agreements. We do change a lot of things. So the developer and the citizens around aren't in limbo as to what's going on, what they're going to get done, and what doesn't get done. So I just want to ease your mind to think that just because we approve something, it's the end all. Right. There's a lot more layers to this process, so there's a lot more steps to be taken. So don't just assume just because we approve it, you no longer have a voice, or we no longer hear your concerns, but there still can be brought up to our attention. So just keep that in mind, and every one of these meetings, try to make sure we hear those concerns so we can address them at the proper time. Because like I said, this is just the zoning. We're not doing all the different changes, so there's still going to be opportunity. So I just want to give you some ease that it's not just a simple process. Trust me, Barrington was not simple. That took us a long time to get that agreement with the developer. So, and we made a lot of changes with their development. So your concerns are heard, and I just want to address that to you.
Ms. Baker, do you want me to circle back to you?
I have nothing at this time.
I'll echo what Vice Chair Long said. And I want to clarify something for the public. What we do up here, this isn't our full-time job. We have a 9-to-5. Some of us have longer 9-to-5s. Right. We get this 500-page packet same time you guys do. So I work in insurance. I was taking claims phone calls of people that have lost their homes, and in between calls, I was reading a 500-page packet. And it's public record. I make $50 a month doing this. So I want you guys to understand that I'm not up here. My board is not up here, and we are just another citizen concerned. Want to make sure that we're making the best and right decisions possible. We also want to see Newberry go in the right direction and not backwards. We don't want it to turn into a town that everybody just forgot because we didn't want it to grow properly. This is a chance that we have to partner up with people correctly. Mr. Coleman has done this with other developments. And he can be the first one, if you were to talk to him, how many times he had to sit before Brian and things changed, even though they came originally with this plan, and now they're this. I mean, I'm pretty confident there's one particular plan that was supposed to be apartments that were going to be in Newberry, and they turned into single-family homes instead. That's how far this thing can stretch. These townhouses can end up becoming something completely different as a sense of it could become single-family homes. They're just coming to us with a plan because we need to see something before we can say, okay, we can work this out. But it's not the end-all be-all here. I give it to staff because they print out these 500 pages for us. And Janine, without fail, will email us this packet. And without fail, she always makes sure that we got everything we need. And I do want to give her a big shout out because I do see her on the street pounding those signs to make sure people are aware. It just sucks that this happened in the middle of Hurricane Ian. So I felt that I needed to address that and make that very well known about my board. We really do take it to heart. This isn't our full-time jobs. And we have to make really hard decisions a lot of the times. So with that being said, if Mrs. Baker, you don't have anything, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I just wanted to address Mr. Hornsby. We do talk to ASO. We do talk to the fire department. We do talk to the school board. All of those things end up in the backup material. Right now, we get preliminary recommendations from them about whether we have the capacity. Before the applicant gets the plat, we will have very detailed. It's part of the process. I get that it's confusing. I've been doing this now for a decade, and I still have not made my way through the labyrinthine paradoxes of different procedures that have to happen. So, and I understand that in your seats, this must seem like just complete camel. I have no idea what's going on here, but there's a method to the madness, and it's here on purpose. And every single concern that has been brought up tonight, we have a procedure to try to address it and mitigate it and make sure that it doesn't happen behind closed doors. It all happens right out here in public. So I just want to make sure you know that we do talk to, we talk to ambulances, we talk to the school board. It's not appropriate to talk about the school board tonight, but I teach ninth grade. I teach all grades actually, but I have a ninth grade class at Newberry High School, has 29 students in it. 4 of those students live in the city of Newberry. 4. So the question isn't why is Newberry building 100 houses overcrowding the schools? The question is, school board, why are you busing 25 kids to the city of Newberry? Because only 4 of those students live in the city of Newberry. I have another class of 29, only 7 of those students live in the city of Newberry. The highest percentage I have is 50%. That's the highest. Most of my classes, they're coming from all over, primarily Jonesville, because if you've seen Jonesville is making Newberry look like we're crawling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're building skyscraper apartments in Jonesville, and those kids are getting bused to Newberry. So I get the chair's concerns. I'm a teacher. I have 29 kids in a room half this size, but only 4 of those kids live in the city of Newberry. So I think that residents are asking the wrong board the questions. The questions should be to Alachua County. The question should be to the school board. Why are you busing over capacity, especially when the city of Alachua has capacity in their schools? So we end up talking about a lot of things up here that are beyond our control and aren't really the topic at hand. And I'd like to get us back on the topic at hand because I agree with future land use, the last one. I see this is in the urban services area. It's close to the schools. Now we're talking about zoning, and so I think it is appropriate to just make sure we understand the density questions, because if this board thinks, I see this as where apartments, townhouses, houses can be, right? But let's have a conversation about the density. That would be the appropriate, this is the appropriate venue to give the commission those kinds of recommendations. So the application's for 850. I don't like to think of it in terms of the number because it's the size of the development, it's the speed at which the growth. And so I think that there was maybe it sounds like some confusion from the leftover from the future land use. Chris, can you come back up and just speak to me like I'm really stupid and you won't be wrong, right? Forget the townhouses, because the townhouses are a different metric in my mind, right? Townhouses are compact. We want the density. Think about the west side, and let's go back to board members Baker's question, and just yay or nay, and staff can chime in. With what is proposed, are we at a higher or lower density than what we're seeing in the rest of Newberry? Are we right in on par?
I would say we're trending towards the lower side. Typically, you see between 3.5 to 3.7. We're down around 3.1 on the west side.
Okay.
Now, to answer your question about that townhouse, I know you think that's more dense, but with the planned development, we're limiting the number of units regardless of the type. So on the east side, we have 260 units maximum. So that can be a combination of townhouses, can be a combination of detached, single family, but we cannot go over that number.
Okay.
So regardless if it's all townhouses, and yes, you can compact them in more, but we're maxed out at that number.
But there will be some number of townhouses, you just don't know, we're too early in the stage to know.
Correct.
Are you just leaving townhouses on the table to potentially, and it might, none of it might be townhouses?
That is correct. We're leaving it open as an option. One, because we know with the market shifting the way it is, that may be a more economical product. But again, it's just an option. When we go back to the type of uses that are allowed, we're asking for those two uses on the eastern property. And so we may have a mix of them, we may have all of one, all of the other, but we don't know at this time.
Okay. Okay.
But your density number is capped at that 260 for that western, or the eastern piece.
Okay.
The eastern piece is 260, the western is 590.
Okay.
So we can't go over those numbers.
And there's no shifting east to west? They're capped separately, even though they're under the same PD?
That is correct.
Okay.
They're capped, but they can go lower in a sense. So like,
That is correct.
So if the east side, I'm just using this as an example. The east side, what I'm looking at is when I drop off my kid at Newberry Elementary, I see all these townhouses in Countryway as I'm going into the elementary school. Behind that is actual single-family homes. There could be a possibility that this going all the way through could end up being exactly that, where it's just townhouses down that line, single families behind. Not saying that that's what's happening, but this is why I see like the planned development and I see exactly where that townhouse strip is. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of the townhouses, but since it's concurrent with what's there and it's just literally adding that strip is why I was like, can't legally, judicially, we can't say no if it's right down the street from us. So I see what you're talking about in that, but it can go less, correct?
Correct. So I guess going back to the mayor's question about a higher density on the townhomes, on the eastern side, we're at 6.5 units per acre. Now that would be if we hit that 260 mark, realistically, the only way is to make all of those townhomes on the east side. If it was all single family, then that number would drastically drop back to the 3 range. So we wouldn't come anywhere near, it'd be theoretically half of that 260 on the east side.
I guess that's my, when you have these sort of options, it throws the density number off when you're mixing these uses. So
correct.
I just want to make sure that this is in line with what we're doing in other places. And I like that last comment. If there are no townhouses, then it comes back into
par.
On par range.
Correct.
In no scenario are we looking at super tiny lots crammed together kind of a thing, right?
Correct.
It'll either be townhomes that have that Florida vernacular, which is what I'm hearing Newberry really needs, rental spaces, right, those kinds of things, or it'll be single-family units. And I would say, and this may be a better comment for the end, but we keep allowing applications to come forward before the developer's agreement is done, and we spend a lot of time up here talking about things that get answered in the developer's agreement, but that you guys don't get a chance to see it because it's not done yet, right? So I think that we should work with the applicant to maybe it's on design that we want to have this conversation, and then you guys go back and finalize the developer's agreement. But it seems to me like it would be better all the way around if we finish the developer's agreement, let this board look at that agreement and make some comments, because I think we've gone off track tonight on various things that would all eventually be addressed in the developer's agreement, and maybe reading those things would have calmed some people's concerns, would have allowed this board to give advice on the developer's agreement, those kinds of things.
So with that comment, with the developer's agreement, and Paul, you can chime in on this, the only items that are out of the norm were the items that staff hit upon in their presentation. So the rest of the developer agreement is, I guess you can say, is cookie cutter with the rest of the other developer agreements throughout the city. And so, but yes, it does kind of add a different mix to it with dividing the parcels and uses. But the benefit of having the plan development is the number of units are capped. So no matter what the use is, you can't go above and beyond that number.
Thank you. I'm good on the question. Oh, Mr. Applicant.
You know,
I
just, these two ladies had questions that no one answered, and I wanted to answer them. Okay? All those spots you saw in there, me and my brothers and our family, our mother live in those spots.
Okay.
So we're not gonna let something be built around us that's not gonna be approved, okay? Because I'm gonna be on that side of this bench when the rest of it goes on. You understand? All right. Your question was on the property. Now, I got a book about this thick, 500 pages, like they said. When I bought that property, I paid a lawyer to read it. Do you want to know how long it took him to read it? Back then, that was been 40 years ago. Okay? At $100 an hour? A bunch. So, I made sure it was all good. They retested it all. It's all still good. Just wanted to let you know that. All right? All right.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Let the record show that was Kevin Coleman. I don't think he ever said his name, so.
Kevin Coleman. Thank you.
Read it in the record for you.
If anybody don't know me, I'm glad to speak to them.
All right. City attorney already advised. Well, final argument has been made.
None from staff.
No, we're good. All right. City attorney already advised the decision-making board. Thank you very much. Deliberations. I think we've pretty much touched this one. I have a head nod. Oh, okay. I was like, no, yeah, I was like, oh, okay. So I got a head nod. If that's the case, then I will entertain a motion.
I have a motion to approve.
I have a motion for Vice Chair Long. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second for Ms. Polo. Any comments on the motion? All right, public comments on the motion. All right, hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye.
No, to be consistent.
I have a no from Ms. Baker with the comment of to be consistent. All right. That being said, there's so much paper. I feel like we killed a bunch of trees in that area just so. All right, Miss. Can you read into number 7, please? Oh, this will, by the way, everybody, this will be before the city commission on the 24th of October. All right, we're ready for the next one.
This is resolution number 2022-67, a resolution of the City Commission serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida for approval of a variance petition as authorized under Section 3.2.5 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, granting an exception to Section 4.2.4 of same to allow for an accessory structure in a side yard on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you. All right, staff, go ahead and, we're still in quasi judicial, just for the record.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated, this is Resolution 2022-67. What?
Oh, wait, ex parte.
No.
Ms. Polo.
Jenny, can you give us a little air conditioning back there? I think that.
No.
71 None.
This is not 71.
I agree.
Tell.
I felt like it cut off.
Yeah.
I am also cold.
You want it colder, right?
Oh, good.
You want it colder, right?
Maybe just turn the fan on.
Ladies are freezing.
No ex parte?
No ex parte.
Okay.
No ex parte communication from the board.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as stated, this is Resolution 2022-67. It's a request for a variance to allow a accessory structure, in this case, an in-ground pool, in the side yard of a single-family lot in Newberry Place. Newberry Place is a neighborhood behind Oakview Village, Oakview Middle School, which is a planned residential development, just by coincidence. So this would be on Lot 87, as you can see there, from a partial depiction of the plat. This is an odd-shaped lot. It's somewhat pie-shaped, but owing to the unique configuration, what has happened when the house was actually placed on the lot, it didn't leave room for a backyard to allow for a pool in the backyard. Normally, pools and accessory structures have to be in the backyard, not allowed in the side yards, and that's what the variance request is about. So basically, we've gone over that part. This is a hand sketch that they did. It shows the general location of where the pool will be. This is a little bit of a better aerial depiction with an estimate of approximate size of the pool, an approximate location. Part of it will be technically in what's considered the backyard. The backyard is, if you look at the far right side of that picture, I wish we had a pointer that worked on TV screens, but we don't. That is the backyard between that white area between the house and the property line. It measures, I'll show you here, right at about 15 feet. So obviously you wouldn't be able to fit a pool in there and stay within setback lines. Their proposed location, based on the sketch they provided, would have a distance of approximately 13 feet from the northern side yard lot line. It would have a distance of about 11 feet from the rear property line and about 8 feet from the house. So side setback lines in Newberry Place are 7.5 feet, so it's within those. There's no variance needed there. The distance from the rear setback line is in Newberry Place is 15 feet. It'd be at roughly 11 feet from the property line, so there'd be a slight variance there to the rear property setback line. However, there is nothing behind this property. It's a common open area, and if you might remember, the commission granted authority to put accessory structures up when there's nothing behind this lot up to the generally up to almost to the property line. And then the distance from the house is important because the Florida Building Code requires a minimum of 6 feet. So it'll be 8 feet from the house, which complies with Florida Building Code. And there's another hand sketch that they provided. Our code basically states that in all districts, all residential districts, that the accessory structures need to be cannot be in the front or side yard, it's supposed to be in the rear yard. Again, because there's not enough room to actually fit a pool in what would be called the rear yard, they're requesting a variance to allow it in the side yard. So basically, based on the hardship created by the unique shape of the lot and the inability to actually physically locate a pool in the back behind the house, staff does recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment by the Planning and Zoning Board for Resolution 2022-67. And that is the end of our presentation. I know it's really short relative to the one we just had, but we'll keep it that way. I don't believe the applicant's present. Oh, there. Oh, sorry.
Very patient. You really want to go swimming.
I will say thank you to the applicant for your patience. Honestly, to be fair, next time I will look a little bit deeper into our agenda and maybe move this first and not have to wait that.
Generally, Mr. Chair, we put the ones that have hired consultants at the front because they're on the clock. So,
It's just more expensive.
Exactly.
All right, if the applicant has a presentation, now would be the time you'd like to present. If not, we can move on to the.
No.
All right, public comments. All right, well, I mean, we had like a long line on the other one, so I never know. We have any cross-examination? No? Members of the decision-making body, got questions? Ms. Paula?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I don't want to ask questions because I know everybody's tired. I just had one question. Are there extra safety concerns or measures that need to be taken? Because I understand that, ordinarily pools in the backyard because that keeps you from having kids run in and access it. Are there additional requirements for increased safety in a side yard?
Mr. Chair, not really, because as long as the pool is contained behind fence and safety features, which it'll have to comply with the Florida Building Code in terms of the required safety features, whether that's in the front yard or rear yard, isn't relative to the Florida Building Code. So it'll meet all of those required features regardless of the location.
Thank you.
Well, I clearly understand this concern because before I got on this board, I had the side yard issue at my own house, so I understand the struggle.
So motivated you to get on the board, right?
Which is
two-person.
Yeah, which is true. But my only question is, with the structure and with the new developments coming to Newberry, is there a way we can change the way the language speaks to homes like this? Because, like I said, there's going to be a lot of cul-de-sacs, roundabout areas and homes that going to have the same struggle, whether it's a shed, a pool, a fence, having a side yard, not having a backyard issue.
Mr. Chair, the code could always be amended by the commission to either allow for administrative approval or approval by the planning and zoning board, so it didn't have to go to the next step, which is before Board of Adjustment. That would basically be the remedy.
Yeah, I think that's something we should, because a lot of people don't understand, like even myself, the ignorance of, I didn't know I didn't have a backyard. I just had a yard. So you don't understand the difficulties of not being able to fall into those guidelines. So I think that's something we should look into, so we don't have to have this. People waiting till 9, 10 o'clock like I had to as well, the same time.
You're in good company.
For a 5-minute briefing. You know what I mean? So they can not have to go through that headache for the next person. So.
Thank you. Ms. Baker?
I don't have any questions. I think it follows all the requirements for a variance.
Yep. All right, with that being said, I don't have anything. Any final arguments?
No, sir.
None. All right, city attorney has advised us already. We can deliberate and not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Of course you do.
Second.
I got hold on a second. I got a motion from vice chair and a second from Ms. Baker. Any comments on the motion? Public comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes unanimous. Let's move on to number 8, please.
And this will be heard.
Oh, this will be heard tomorrow.
No.
Oh, was that what?
Well, we might hit tomorrow.
This will be heard on October 24th before the Board of Adjustments. All right, JP, lead us into number 8, please. This is our final quasi-judicial hearing.
Real briefly, I'm going to read it.
No ex parte.
Huh?
We gotta read it.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Oh, please, Madam Attorney, please read us.
This is resolution number 2022-68, a resolution of the City Commission serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, for approval of a variance petition as authorized under Section 3.2.5 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, granting an 8-foot encroachment into the required 10-foot rear yard setback for an accessory structure on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Do you have any ex parte communications? I got a no from Ms. Polo, a no from Vice Chair Long.
No.
I have a no from Ms. Baker and no from me. So JP, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you is a variance to allow an 8-foot encroachment into a 10-foot required rear yard setback for a lot 128 in the Countryway of Newberry Phase 3 Plan Development. On the screen is the location of lot 128 within the Countryway development. The applications by Jacob and Gilberto Gonzalez Walker. They have owned the home since construction. They're requesting to put a pool in that backyard of theirs. It's PD, so they established their own rear yard setback, and for this particular one, they picked a 10-foot rear yard setback and a 20-foot front yard setback. Here are the setback requirements as they're printed on the plat. It's an aerial image of the property. Aerials haven't been updated to show the home yet, but this shows this is also a corner lot.
Oh, it's the corner one? It's not this one?
No, yeah, 128, the corner one, yeah.
So it's it's another one of those.
It's a funny one.
It's a Donald Long property.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna start calling it now.
Here's on the south side of 21st Circle is the block in question, lot 128's the subject property all the way at the end of this block. What's shown in the dashed line is a 10-foot public utility easement in the front yard. As you can see, this property has all front yard and then what could be 2 side yards, but it's been interpreted to be a rear yard and then a side interior yard. And so they're dealing with the majority of their property having the most demanding setback, which is the front yard setback, in this case 20 feet. In addition, this was presented to us today, but this floor plan was created by the developer with the land, with the purchaser, the applicant. And there was an understanding from the very beginning that they would be placing a pool on this property.
Okay.
And because of that, the location of the home was supposed to be oriented in a way that would maximize that rear yard space so they could fit a pool there. Unfortunately, when the house was actually placed onto the property, as you'll see on this one, there's a lot of developable area, which is in that tighter dashed lined area. That's all developable area. That was left unused. So they could have reoriented the home in a different way that would have allowed for greater maximization and avoiding a variance in the future.
Are you talking about that dotted line? That's right
Yeah,
where the pool
it's
is?
just a lot of dotted lines. So
No,
the
I'm
one
sorry.
closest to the house.
That one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the setbacks. So within that area, that's where they can build their buildable area. So with the rear porch, it just kind of makes it a weird orientation. So this is the front yard setback that we're looking at, the 20 feet. That's the 2-foot setback they're going to be providing for the pool. That's going to be the edge of water. So there will be a 2-foot platform for the pool that'll probably go right up to the property line. This is a picture of their backyard. So in plan view, it looks a lot bigger than it actually is. This photo kind of demonstrates how tight it is back there. It's big?
No, very tight.
Oh, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
You have a pond, not a pool.
Right, yeah, some koi fish, not humans. And they also provided examples of other, so that demonstrates the hardship, you know, it's not something that they created. Another thing that we like to demonstrate with variances is that this is a right that's commonly enjoyed by other folks in the community, so other people have pools in their backyards. And, you know, because of this hardship, they're being denied a right commonly enjoyed by other neighbors. And their pool will probably be about 15 feet. I went through on City of Newberry. The average width of a pool is about 15 feet. They're orienting the pool in the only manner that they can for this lot. With the lengthwise with the rear property line. So this is a property also in the same neighborhood, 15-foot width pool. This is one in Newberry Oaks, also 15-foot width.
I was gonna say, that's the one that I was looking at, that's very similar to.
Yeah.
Being close to the property line.
Yeah, yeah. This one's remarkably similar because of the lot depth. A lot of the properties in Newberry, in Country Way, have like 130-foot lot depth. The applicant has a 100-foot lot depth. And these typically are between 120 and 100 in Newberry Oaks. And this is a picture of the pool. Yeah.
Dog drinking pool water, right?
It might be one of those salt water pools. Maybe. So the motion would be to recommend to the Board of Adjustment to approve with conditions or deny the request.
All right, does the applicant have anything? Did you want to come up and say anything?
Let me first by start saying that
Oh, you can
this
come
has
up.
been, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, can you come up to the microphone? Because, because there's people
Sorry.
watching on TV, actually.
Gotcha. First, let me say this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so tonight has been truly educational. Secondly, we tried our best from day one with Northfleet to present this house on this lot in a way so when I retire, this is going to be our retirement home. And everything got shifted, and I was completely ignorant to the building setback limits. I knew nothing about that. I've always lived in condos. I moved from Atlanta to here.
Congratulations.
Hey, you might stay.
This is so slow paced to me.
This is the
I love
applicant
it.
Walker.
And
Sorry.
so I tried my best to be as proactive as possible with the knowledge that I knew. And I've learned through this entire step questions that I should have asked from day one that I did not know, and that's completely my mistake. So because of that, I'm having to come here today to present this case in hopes that we can actually get things reshifted back to what we originally planned to do. So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. My cheat sheet. So, that was the applicant, by the way.
No, you gotta state his name.
Oh.
He didn't
Well-
state his name.
Not what he was.
Yeah, he did, I thought.
Yeah, I thought you did. No, it's all right, you're good.
Do you remember everything you said? Say it all over.
All right, now, this might take a minute, but we do have a long line of public comments waiting to.
Okay, I've been here since 6. I've been here since 4.
All right.
I know your pen.
Do you have any cross-examinations on this one, Jape?
Staff waives.
Okay, no, you're good with staff. All right, we can deliberate, we'll ask questions, sorry, go ahead. You have questions for staff or the applicant?
I'm just gonna make the same comment as I made with the previous variance, that it follows all of the required elements for variance. The lot size is crazy. I mean, the lot configuration is crazy.
I'm gonna go on here and just say that as a, we're in quasi judicial, I can't be dropping libertarian on here. But, yeah.
It's there to help you.
Yeah. This
You
kind
know
of
my-
stuff, the long, I'm gonna call this the long proceedings.
I mean, you know my opinion on it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't
Ms.
have to go
Pohl,
through this.
do you have any questions?
I have no questions for staff or the applicant.
All right, with that being said, city attorney, well, actually, any final arguments? No. Waive. City attorney has advised us already. We can deliberate, and if not, I will entertain a motion, which, you know what, I'm gonna just put it out there because it's freedom. Motion to approve.
Second.
Whoa, simultaneous.
All right, I got a motion, I got a second. Do I have any comments on the motion? Public comments. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna give it to Ms. Baker over here. So it's a motion from the chair, and then, I thought Baker dropped the second. You've had a lot of seconds today. Baker, second. Any comments? I heard none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous. Enjoy. Thank you for your services.
It'll be heard.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You have one more step. You got to hear it through the Board of Adjustments on October 24th. But yes, we hope you enjoy your pool.
You up like they did mine.
For real. Sorry.
You have to wait until 10 o'clock.
I'll show up at 9 o'clock at night. I'll time this right.
I appreciate your patience. Thank you so much for being here. But it will be on October 24th, before the Board of Adjustment, so.
Very much.
Yeah. All right, with that being said, do we have topics for member discussion?
I would like to share that the Greater Gainesville Chamber of Commerce is going to be holding a Veterans Appreciation Luncheon on November 1st. If anybody would like to attend or sponsor or nominate a veteran to receive an award for their service to the country. Also, if anybody wants to help me with my scarecrow that's going right outside of this building, I am open to any creative input that you may have.
Well, thank you, Ms. Polo. Member Long? Okay.
I have nothing.
I just want to give my condolences again to, serving next to Linda had been an honor. It really has. That one definitely hurts, and I know there's a lot of people in our community hurting, but I believe her, they're gonna have a memorial this Friday. So she was great for our community. She did a lot of good things. She volunteered a lot of her time. So I'm very thankful for the time we had. Thankful that the Lord gave us all the time that we were able to enjoy with her. So, and I hope she's resting in her final resting place in peace. So, and that's all I got.
I just have a few things that are coming up. I'll try to keep it quick. I know it's late. This Friday is UF's homecoming. Schools will be shut down, so we'll all go cheer on the Gators. On Saturday, so Friday's UF's homecoming. Saturday, the Lions Club is having a yard sale. Are we doing pancake? No, it's Gordo's Breakfast is going to be there.
Yeah,
Gordo's Breakfast will be there. And all the proceeds are going to help the victims of Ian.
And Tanya.
And Tanya again.
For Lyme disease.
Okay. So if you can come out, donate, buy something, get some breakfast, help out. So that's Friday, Saturday. Next week is Newberry's homecoming. So we'll have Panther Prowl. It's a big Panther Prowls like Gator Growl, right? Big pep rally for the football team going into the homecoming game on Friday. It's against Eastside. We are back on track. So that's next Thursday, the 13th, October 13th at Newberry High School. On Friday, we'll have the homecoming parade. We'll start lining up at 2. The parade starts at 3, or as soon as the buses clear out of the way, because we can't clog up the buses, so it might be 3:05, that kind of thing. We're asking everybody that's participating in the parade. We'd love to have a P&Z float if you guys want to throw one together. Go past the high school on Newberry Road turn down 260th heading south like you're going to the cemetery and get lined up that way. And we're asking all the drivers to pull off to the right side of the road. That keeps a nice lane open in case we need to get an ambulance in or out, and makes everybody pointed in the right direction. So that will happen around 3 o'clock on Friday. And then, of course, come to the homecoming game. We'll whoop up on the Rams, and we'll crown a homecoming king and queen there, right, that night. This is the first time, Newberry, first time in 2 or 3 years. We had the shutdown. No, the shutdown didn't affect this. We had Digital Academy. Then we had some extracurricular phone calls last year that canceled our parade, made it difficult to do Panther Proud Live. So we'll be getting a lot of that stuff back on track. Those are my community announcements of things that'll happen before we meet again. So we'd love to participate on P&Z announcements. We've asked before, we've had this conversation that kind of fell off the radar, but tonight we moved forward a project that is going to have a lot of these kinds of strange configurations. There's going to be a lot of lots because, I've never seen a project that was shaped the way that the application has it shaped tonight. I think that gives the most discomfort of any of it. So these variations, these things that we're going to be dealing with, I think we're going to have, it's not just that project, we have a lot of them. And it seems to me like we hit some sort of stumbling block here, but we had asked staff to look at if this fits everything and there's really no reason to object, let staff just handle it. If staff says no, then the applicant has the opportunity to appeal to the board. But on some of these things, they're just sort of cookie cutter. Nobody has any questions. Nobody has any objections. It fits everything. So I know that there's going to be some instances where that's not possible, but I'd like staff to look at, because we certainly could go back and change the code, or we could simply empower staff like we've tried to do in the historic district. If someone has an application, it fits the historic culture, right? It's restoring it. There's no need to work through that process. Staff can say, yes, you can put a tin roof on a house that had a tin roof on it 100 years ago. You don't need to work through that process. So if we could sort of address that, see if that's possible, not necessarily tonight, but.
Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do that.
On our to-do list.
But I'll just remind the board that took a change to code, so.
And we did part of it, we didn't do, we'll figure it out, get it back on. And then we had another variance tonight that was partially because the house got built differently than what it was first originally proposed. And y'all had a solution to that a lot of municipalities do around us, but I can't remember the name. It had something to do with a survey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's a foundation survey. For large lots, it's less of an issue, but as the lots continue to shrink in size and the house sizes remain large, the footprints, it becomes a little bit more critical to do a foundation survey prior to letting the contractor construct the foundation. Because basically what they do is they come out, they identify all the corners, and then they run the lines to show exactly where the footprint of the foundation will be, which then allows the building department to measure to make sure that they're within the building setback lines, or in the case of a set of plans, that they are located actually where the plans call for. Because as you pointed out in this instance, for one of our variances, their intent was to have it 3 or 4 feet this way, somehow, some way, and it could have been a field adjustment. It's always possible that for some reason, when the contractor was laying it out, there was a field adjustment necessary. But for whatever reason, it ended up shifting back to the point where now when they go to put their pool in, they don't have enough room. And so developers don't necessarily like it because it adds about $300 to the cost of the project.
Okay, well, I think it's maybe something that staff should present to this board and let us sleep on it and think about it. It sounds to me like that would be a cure-all. Like before anyone moves forward, because you guys approve it, you guys recommend to approve it, but after that, the developer is kind of, I need to shift it 2 feet here, that way. We don't really have a way to know. And the only time it trips is when someone's either being a really good citizen and says, oh, someone noticed this, or they have to add on to the house or build the house, or they go to sell the house, and now they can't because it's 1 foot into the setback, and now it's a big issue. So having this may be a step that Newberry's ready to take. I don't really know the answer to that for sure, because we haven't had a presentation on it or heard about it. But it does sound like that would be the cure-all for all of these variances and setback issues, because it would be one last step where we'd say, okay, this is what we approved, this is where you're building it, everything matches our, oh, wait a minute, you moved the house 3 feet this way. How did that happen? Yeah, okay.